Raylan Brandel,
Present.
Laura Casey, Dan Dennehy, Mary McCormick, Cindy Perdue-Dolan, Cindy Shaw, Chad Silk,
Here.
Matt Steppen, Ben Thielen.
Can we have our Pledge of Allegiance and prayer?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, we implore you to look upon us this night as we make decisions which shall greatly affect our so of our community. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds, so they may please you and best serve our fellow citizens.
Okay, public comment on any item on the agenda. Okay. And how about public comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the study commission?
Thank you, Chairman Brandel. My name's John Sorge, 1820 Wilson, former commissioner 20 years, volunteer for approximately 15 years. I'm not here to talk about fire department. I'm not here to talk about commissioner stuff. I'm here to talk about the project that you're all involved in. It's huge, and it's just to serve as a reminder that it's going to the responsibilities and the how it has the potential of changing the future of our community. So again, it's a lot to ascertain in such a short time. And so I just want to remind you to be very vigilant. You never know where the next email is going to come from. You never know where the next phone call is going to come from. But just a reminder, it's a big project, and just keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. Sorge. We appreciate your comments. Thank you. Any other comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the study commission? Okay. All right, with that, can I move to approval of minutes of the meeting held 9th of June, 2025?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I approve the minutes, I did have some corrections that I would like to make. On page 8, this is all the way at the bottom. This is under J, Roman numeral 4. The sentence says, if we are going to grow, every department in addition to the fire department is going to have to grow. It's scary that you have reach and you had 4. It should say your, Y-O-U-R, your funding cap. Okay, and then on page 9, if you go down to item 8, correspondence or study commission update, and this is a sub A, Roman numeral 2. Next week we have the volunteer fire department. It should say fire department. F-I-R-E. And then on to page 10, under 9, unfinished business, this is item 6. We have 2 misspellings of Ms. Adams' last name. It should be A-D-A-M-S, not A-D-M-A-S. That's on 10. And then on page 11, from the top down, sub B, it also should say Adams, not A-D-M-A-S. And then right below that, on the small b, the council commissioners have been invited to attend our meetings. We have asked, you put the to organize, it should be them, and that's it.
Any other corrections or changes? Okay, thank you. May I ask for a motion to approve the minutes as amended by Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to approve the minutes of the meeting of June 9th, 2025 as amended.
Is there a second? Ms. Dolan seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you for approving our minutes. All right, so moving on, we have our conversation with departments. And so we have Mr. Tui Mattern, who will start us off tonight with answering the questions that we sent out regarding the volunteer fire departments. And then Mr. Mattern, I'll go ahead and let you introduce the next speaker when it's time, when you're finished with yours, if that's okay, in our form and function. And I want to for the good of the order, give a reminder of our work. So the Study Commission is here to review the charter, make recommendations to the charter, and we aren't about ordinances. We aren't the legislative body, but rather we can make recommendations, but we can't make changes to ordinances. We can make changes to our charter or recommend changes to the voters to approve for the charter. And I want to make sure that we are painting this picture that we're here to hear from all of our public as much as possible, and we want to be very thoughtful and deliberative with this process. We don't want to have a meeting where we're litigating or we're bringing up, past grievances. We're rather here to solve problems. And so as commissioners, as we move through the questions tonight, I ask us to stay on topic, please, with the charter. And then we will do some follow-up questions, Mr. Mattern. And we do appreciate you coming tonight, and we thank you very much for getting yourselves organized and being ready to present to us. We think this is an important matter, and we're ready to listen and here to do what we can with our charter. So thank you very much. You have prepared a nice packet for us, so we appreciate that very much. We typically go round robin with our questions, and so since you have prepared answers, I think that will help us a little bit as well. And then if there are follow-ups that you would like us to, you can add to that your answers in there as well. And our commissioners will ask their follow-up questions too. So commissioners, is there anything that I've missed in terms of the order of operations or how we go about? Thank you. All right, so tonight, if I could start with Ms. McCormick, we'll start on this side of the room. If you could lead us off with our first question, and Mr. Mattern's ready to go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mattern, for being here tonight, and all the rest of you chiefs. It's great to see you here. And I just want to start off that I appreciate that you have provided an edited version of the charter. And that really gives us a good basic understanding of what you're looking at, so I want to thank you for doing that. Our first question is, what are the specific responsibilities and duties of a Butte-Silver volunteer fire chief, department chief?
Sorry. Madam Chair and Board, please excuse me, I'm extremely nervous, not used to doing this. So if you'll see the attached, I actually attached to the back of if you go 5 pages back, the next page is actually the position description for the chief of the Racetrack Volunteer Fire District, which I am currently the chief of the Racetrack Volunteer Fire District. In that, you'll see that there's many duties and responsibilities for a volunteer fire chief. I know that we say the word volunteer and we start to look down at that, but we do have many responsibilities, including making sure that our firefighters are protected and safe, our buildings are maintained, our equipment is maintained, and many other duties that include a lot of time, money, blood, sweat, and tears that your volunteer chiefs put in. Myself included, money comes out of my pocket for my department a lot because we don't have the money to actually maintain a lot of our stuff. So the last time I had to put batteries in my air packs, that came out of my own pocket personally. So I feel like that position description gives you just about everything that we do. I am elected by my board of trustees. We have 5 trustees that sit on our board, and I am not elected. I am basically hired by them due to my qualifications.
Follow-up questions? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here tonight. I remember this young gentleman when he was a dancing fireman, so thank you for all your work with the young people. It's appreciated. I just wanted to back up and ask, did you want to read this for the people that are watching on YouTube? Did you want to read this preface before we start asking the questions?
Madam Chair and Cindy, I would like to give a brief history of what your volunteer fire service of this community is and what we do and how we provide it. So I actually had kind of prepared a statement a little bit towards that end, because I feel like we haven't necessarily been represented accordingly of what we actually do and what we provide to Butte-Silver and our fire districts.
Thank you, Ms. Dolan, for pushing pause, and please do give your presentation of the overview.
Oh, once again, I apologize. I'm extremely, extremely nervous. I can dance down Harrison Avenue, but I can't do this.
This is no pressure. It is a conversation, so nobody's, we get imperfect all the time. I will definitely goof up the agenda at some point tonight, so hopefully that will make you feel more relaxed.
Okay, that helps. Yeah, I'll just start by reading this. Good evening, Madam Chair and Study Commission. My name is Gary Matter, and I'm the Chief of the Racetrack Rural Fire District. Racetrack Rural Fire District was founded September 28th, 1939. Our district currently has 25 active members, but through the years, we've seen hundreds of volunteers committed to our service. We are currently the home of Engine 77, a 2006 Spartan purchased on a federal grant, and Squad 77, a 2004 F550 that was 100% donated to the Racetrack Rural Fire District to pull our community fire safety trailer, which we received on another federal grant in 2003. I had a side note on this, that these federal grants were safer Fire Act grants that we received both of those pieces of apparatus on, and Squad 77 was donated. If you look at the side of our fire safety trailer, there's a whole list of donors. That truck is 100% donated from those donors because we needed a truck to pull that trailer, and we just happened to have enough money that we were actually able to buy a fire truck to help support our community. Those Safer Act grants were, they did have a matching fund. Those matching funds came out of the wildland funds, and so technically Butte-Silver taxpayers never actually paid any money for those pieces of apparatus, including that kid's fire safety trailer. I just wanted to add that extra little note. We are a very active department, not only in fire response, but also in our training, community events, and fire and life safety programs. Through my almost 30 years of volunteer fire service to our community, I have been known as Douse the Fire Clown, the Dancing Fireman, Captain, Assistant Chief, and Current Chief. To me, the safety to our community and to our firefighters is at the highest priority. Our fire safety trailer has taught countless children and families how to protect themselves and their homes from fire. In addition, we have targeted even younger by our kids' puppet shows that we have put on for years. And furthermore, we have put on adult fire education classes, mainly to assist the 4Cs in teaching their new caregivers. I'm a firm believer that our duty is to prevent fire before it ever happens. It is the best way to keep us all safe, our firefighters and our citizens. For our department, our Assistant Fire Chief has a fire instructor certification and almost 20 years of experience. Our senior captain is a master of many things, but is a wildland fire expert with nearly 30 years of experience. And our list grows from there. We have gas guys, electricians, plumbers, EMTs, car experts, police officers, safety experts. We have teens, adults, parents, grandparents, men and women. When you call the volunteer fire department, you get a big ball of free knowledge and dedication to service. The strength of our responding force comes from our diversity of background, talents, experience, expertise, never individuality. We leave our families, our homes, our paying jobs. We leave at a moment's notice to serve our community. We have left birthdays, holidays, and even vacations to come help our departments and our neighbors and our town. We do so not knowing what we might be walking into. And over time, just like our career brethren, It can take its mental toll. Yet, we do it with pride, honor, dignity, and for free. Sorry, I had to take a moment and bring myself down there. Just a few examples of time spent helping respond to community fires include, and there's many more than what I included, many, many, many more, and many more over generations. Montana Broom and Brush Fire, 2002. Racetrack gave 10 firefighters and 17 hours. Wayland Tire Warehouse Fire, 2009. Racetrack gave 12 firefighters and 20 hours. M&M Fire, 2001. Racetrack gave 13 firefighters for 19 hours. That's free labor. Free. No overtime, no wages. Free. You had gas costs. That's it. Our department has strived for excellence in training, communication, and community service. We have seen a variety of volunteers, some that have briefly been part of our endeavors, and hundreds that have answered the call for years because they want to. In these years, personalities, leadership styles, and abilities have varied highly, or highly varied, excuse me. Amid this diversity, we have striven towards the same goals: support our neighbors in their time of need, and collaborate with our career firefighters and our fellow volunteers. While not all our members and leaders have seen eye to eye, our goals have not changed. We are depending on each other to meet these goals and continue a tradition of excellence. I ask you today if the current leadership has the same goals. If so, why can't we find a way to keep communication transparent, frequent, and open to reach these goals? You've all heard the Director of Fire Services. We can all agree on the contentious nature of the proposition, communication, support, and now repercussions of House Bill 547. I had another side note on that. Early on in House Bill 547, I had a very great conversation with a good friend of mine, Derek Harvey, who was actually one of the people that wrote the bill and came from Racetrack. Early on, he said this bill was not an attack on the volunteers. And he reassured me that that was not what this bill was about, and it turned into just that. And I'm not angry at him. I'm not upset with any of them. They have difference of opinions. We should have just sat down and talked about it, but we didn't, and now here we are. I did kind of put those questions in order on that, and if you did want to go through and ask those from me from this point on, I'd be more than happy to answer those. I feel like I've already answered question one.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate, again, the pause button to go back to your introduction. We're nervous too, so we're okay.
Okay.
So are there any follow-ups to what Mr. Mattern had to say in regards to his introduction? Or any clarifications, Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick follow-up to the last comment that you made, that you did speak with Derek Harvey. I'm just curious, and I know, well, I won't qualify it, but did he say, why didn't he, I'm just curious with the legislation, what did he say about not including you in that discussion, or was that post, once the bill was vetoed, or did you speak with that at the beginning of the process? I'm just curious.
No, ma'am. Sorry, Cindy. I spoke with him early on. the day we found out the bill was going to hit the floor, which was that same day. And of course, since we were kind of blindsided by it, I made a phone call to him and asked him, what is this? And not knowing legal jumbo, that's not my expertise. I asked him point blank, this feels like an attack. And he said, this isn't an attack. And I felt like throughout the whole process, it just was. I don't think that was Derek's intention. And like I said, I'm not angry at him. I'm disappointed. He'll forever be my friend, and I will forever forgive. We just need to be able to sit down, that's all. And that's as a whole group. I answer some of those in my questions, too.
Excellent. Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, thank you. Tui, thanks for being here. Hey, I just have a question on these fires that you mentioned. And is that 20 hours per man? Is it continuous hours? So if you got 10 guys there, so it's more like 200 hours, right?
Yeah, technically. So since we are a volunteer fire department, we have guys come and go. Like, for example, the M&M fire. I left as the chief of the racetrack. We were positioned in the rear of the structure, and I had to leave because the next day was a work day. And I had some work responsibilities at my paying job to actually go and accomplish. So I left for about an hour and then came back. But while my crew still stayed there. So that's the entirety of what our department had stayed on that fire scene. So that could have been comings and goings of some of those volunteers, but that's how many of them had at least initially responded on that call. So I hope that answered that.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, Chief, you said that 5 trustees elected you as the chief. Are they members of the Racetrack Fire Department, or where do the trustees, how are they placed?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, Board. The trustees can come from anyone that lives within the fire district. Currently on our board, there's only one person that's an active firefighter in our department. The rest are all just people that live within the fire district.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Tui, for being here. So when we talk about the district trustees, can you walk us through what that election process looks like? How many people normally run for a seat? A true election fashion of more seats or more individuals than open seats in a true election, and how is the public made aware of those rural fire district trustees? And for example, I have a piece of property in Racetrack's district. How is the community made aware and fully transparent on fire district trustee elections, and how often do they happen where it's not filled by acclamation with just one person for one seat, but multiple people for one seat? And does the clerk and recorder give or get notes of that? Because through the House bill, I've heard over and over that, and even in this meeting too, that the trustees are voted by the people. But in a true election format, we usually have more candidates than open seats. So is there normally more candidates than open seats? And can you walk us through that, please? Thank you.
Sure. There is normally not more candidates. Normally they are acclamation because we just don't have the amount of people that want to run for it. If you look in the front of Racetrack Fire Department, on the front door there is a posting of the trustees' meetings and when they happen. And yes, all of our minutes and all of our recordings go to the county clerk and recorder. So all of that is in their office. We just had a meeting last week. Our minutes are now with the clerk and recorder. If we had more than one person that was trying to run for a seat, we would have an election just like any normal election. They would go to the voters and they'd be able to vote on that.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. And a follow-up to that is, with those seats being filled by acclamation, it's I guess not a true election of having multiple people for multiple seats. So when I hear that the district trustees are elected by the people, that's sometimes not true. And I thank you for saying that those minutes are filed with the clerk and recorder. And you as a representative, one of three speaking tonight, do all volunteers host those elections the same way? Have we had, can you remember the last time we had an election of district trustees? Thank you.
I can't tell you how, or if I remember when there was an actual election for a district trustee, but that goes for the sewer board too. The sewer board has trustees, and I don't remember the last time they had an election for the sewer board either. So they're not exactly sought-after positions. We would love for them to be. We would love to have more diversity in our trustees' positions. And unfortunately, I can't speak on behalf of the other volunteer departments necessarily, because they may do things a little bit different. We do have Kate Dimwitty that will be speaking in a little bit, and she's an expert on fire districts and rural fire districts. So she might be able to answer those questions way better than I can.
Great, thank you.
And I think it's true that we have acclamation elections in a lot of different areas of Butte-Silver too, so it's not unusual because these are volunteer positions. I appreciate the line of questioning though in terms of how do we supervise with trustees and how does that function, and is there maybe a better way of making sure we have public involvement or more information out there? It's a good line of questioning, so I appreciate that. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. Saying not a true election is probably not correct because, like Ms. Brandel just said, even the school district, the school elections, there are a lot of, in most recent years, several positions on the school board that people just don't want to run, and because again, it's volunteer, they don't get paid, and they get a lot of grief from a lot of community members about the schools. So, but in fact, it is an election because they're noticed, they're on the ballot, or excuse me, if they're not on the ballot, they're noticed and then represented, and then within time, hopefully, we'll have more than one person per area. But in fact, even by acclamation, it is confirmed. I guess is the best way to say it.
Just to follow, Madam Chair, and thank you for that, Cindy. And I appreciate the fire district trustees that go for it because no one else wants to. Totally understand that. And I will ask hard questions because it needs to be answered. So I do appreciate that being brought up because there's a lot of other people that have the same questions that I do. But when we say that the fire district trustees are voted by the people, we got to make sure what we're talking about and that we're fully transparent when we talk about that. So that's where I was coming with that. Thank you.
All right, any other follow-ups, Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Chief, for being here. Could you just explain to us how someone becomes a volunteer and what kind of training they receive?
Sure. Becoming a volunteer is just as easy as walking through the door and asking how to do it. They fill out an application form. That application form currently goes to Station 1 for backgrounds and all of that processing. And then they're notified through that process of whether or not their backgrounds came through. And then they fill out a different form. They fill out that form just like they're a Butte-Silver employee almost. And then from there, they are allowed to participate in trainings as long as they're 18 years of age. We do have cadet programs that are starting at 16 years of age. They are not allowed to respond at all, but they're able to do the trainings. Racetrack trains every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Everybody's more than welcome to come attend if there's questions about what our trainings consist of. But no firefighter is allowed to respond until they complete the Firefighter 1. You have to be a minimum of Firefighter 1 qualification to actually step on a fire scene. We just completed that through the state of Montana, down at the Fire Training Center. Racetrack had 2 firefighters that actually currently completed their Firefighter 1 and are now eligible to actually respond on calls.
Ms. McCormick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief. I just wanted to ask you a question about your department's response. Is there ever been a time when fire has occurred in your district that you've had no response or a low number of firefighters available to respond?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, there's not a volunteer fire district that couldn't say the same thing. We are volunteers. We all have jobs during the daytime. We have families. We have a lot of other things. Yes, there's times that I respond with 2 firefighters. There's times that we have 3. I can't remember the last time that we dropped a call and didn't have response. We may have been delayed, but never, I can't remember a dropped call. But low numbers, absolutely. It's a national-wide crisis of volunteers in low numbers, and we're trying to buck that trend by being a very active department.
Are we, Ms. Cohen?
Thank you, Chairman Bandel. Chief, when you say that, let me see, when they start and they've completed their training, and you can respond once you're a firefighter 1, is that firefighter 1 the same firefighter 1 classification as the career firefighters? Or is that like a different system, or?
As far as I know, it's the same curriculum. I think the career fire department might take it a little extra step. Currently, like right now, I have 3 from Racetrack and 1 from Boulevard that is currently working on getting their National Firefighter 1. And then once they get their National Firefighter 1, they'd like to get their National Firefighter 2, and kind of climb the ladder that way. We do have lots of guys that want to go on to career positions, so they're trying to prepare themselves for that. And we enjoy using them during that time frame that they're working their way to make it to a career fire department.
Okay. Can we move to question 2?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief, for being here. Stop, drop, and roll. Okay, question 2. What are the most critical problems presently confronting the volunteer fire department?
This one's a long one. I apologize.
No, apologize.
In my opinion, this kind of breaks down to my opinion. These can be broken down into 4 categories. They include communication, collaboration, equipment maintenance, and state ordinance. In terms of communication, there is none. Communication doesn't exist. We don't talk, we don't email, when we do, it's very basic of certain needs. I think the last email I got was the hose test list. We need to be way more open with our communication. And that goes across the board. We all need to be better at it. It needs to be consistent. We should know each other on a first name basis. Our firefighters should know the director on a first name basis. I don't feel like half my firefighters could pick the director of fire services out of a lineup. We want to be visible. We want to be heard. I don't feel like we're heard. I don't feel like our communication is valid. And they might feel the same way. I hate to put us and them, too, by the way. That's also a side note here. I hate to do that. It shouldn't be us and them. It should be we for them, but it's not. Collaboration. Collaboration brings strength, protection to our community. It makes us better as individuals and departments. Our volunteers come to the table with the sole driving force of wanting to be part of an effort that matters. When our volunteers are not treated with respect or given clear roles, expectation, or value, collaboration cannot occur. This doesn't require similar views, identical opinions, or flawless execution. It requires simple act of collaboration, fed by strong leaders willing to work towards shared goals despite differences. This could improve in many ways. We have a fire council that is meant to be comprised of all departments to solve issues. But Butte-Silver Fire Department does not partake in this council. The director gave the example of the strength of Helena Fire Service last week and the difference between Butte and Helena. Helena's Fire Council consists of all their fire departments, their police department, their sheriff's department, their search and rescue, their ambulance service. All of them come to the table, including Montana City Fire Department, even though it's in a different county, because they have an automatic mutual aid response with the city of Helena. So they come to the table also. That is collaboration. Other examples of how we could collaborate involve not only the fire council, but Racetrack trains religiously every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. We're always there. There's always a group of us there. Most of our officers are normally there. And it's open to all. And the invitation is given repeatedly for anybody. Have questions? Attend. Want to improve collaboration? Come join us. Want to share tactics and thoughts? Bring it on. And finally, of this, well, not finally, in terms of equipment issues and maintenance, Racetrack engine has been broken for 8 years with no foreseeable solution. It took 4 years to fix the department's internet. It took 5 years to get a roof put on my station. I would love to have all firefighters fit tested, as it is protocol. Well, we don't have the money to do that. We don't have the funding to actually provide that, but I would love to do it. It's a necessity. We have firefighters with holes in their gear that are responding on fires, and there is no long-term budget solution to address these needs. It feels as though our needs are not only not prioritized, but they don't matter. And as ordinances, as for state ordinances, I believe that we should just follow the state fire code of what regulates rural fire districts, and we wouldn't have a lot of these problems.
Follow-up questions? Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief, for that, honest approach, and it seems to be very telling. I'm just going to say that in a word. So on the budget aspect of things, I mean, how can you have gear with holes in it and consider that to be even OSHA approved? And then what about our budget? I'm really not so clear exactly what the budget is and what you have a line item here and there for anything. I mean, what were the expectations when the volunteer fire department even started to have at least the safety of gear that doesn't have holes or tears or anything like that? That's just, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Thank you.
I'm trying to think of the best way I can answer. Maybe you're not aware. I don't know what level of awareness you are, but none of these volunteer fire districts get their own budget. We don't get money. The money that we do get, we're the only fire district that probably in the state of Montana that we don't receive our tax funds in any way. It all goes to the Director of Fire Services, and he gets to allocate the budget the way he feels it needs to be allocated. So when we need money or we need things, we have to beg, steal, and borrow. For the last, 10 years, we've had the TIFIT funds, and they've been stellar because those TIFIT funds actually allowed us to purchase a lot of new gear for our firefighters. But unfortunately, being an active department, we go through gear. And, we go through firefighters too. So that gear is custom made for one firefighter. And then when they leave and they move on to a career position, they get gear at that department. And now I have gear that may or may not fit those people properly when they do come in, because that gear wasn't made for them. So you kind of have to play that guessing game. So yeah, as far as the budget goes, we don't really get any. It's beg, steal, and borrow if you can. And I get it. The budget's short and it's tight. And we have lots of departments, but we have needs. That's all there is to it. Just like any fire department, we have needs. And unfortunately, in the fire service, everything has gone through the roof price-wise. Like, you can't, to suit a firefighter is close to $10,000. That's just one. You know, and that's even a rough guess. By tomorrow, that price could be up even higher. So the fire service is expensive. I get that. But, yeah.
Okay, I have to put us on a 10-second pause. Our door is locked from the inside and outside, and so it's very ironic that the fire department is inside a locked room with us, with one exit to my right. Mr. Callahan, I see you at the back. Would you mind going to find somebody to unlock that for us? Thank you.
We are the fire department. We can open it.
Mr. Silk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tui, you bring up a great point with the joint, meetings and stuff like that with the sheriff, the highway patrol, and the ambulance service, and the LEPC is one of those meetings within our local community that are the volunteers asked to go to the LEPC meeting to collaborate, such as what you mentioned before about having collaboration?
I haven't been invited.
Okay.
Have we been invited?
Okay, I think that'd be something very easy that the LEPC would be more than willing to do. And, of some of your concerns, and it's a great point. So I appreciate that. When we go to training for, say, such as SCBAs, and training is one of the things that I see as the most critical problem. And we've had long conversations over the years about how we can provide a better service in this community. We can fit test members for SCBA mask and regulators. They cannot have a beard, and they have to be able to pass the test. With that being said, not everyone wears an SCBA in the volunteer fire service, and when they cost $15,000 a piece, when the budget is capped, as the director has mentioned before, we need to be able to have some sort of structure, as we discussed in 2021, when we all got together to try to figure out a training program for the fire service. And we came up the lines of support services and interior firefighting services, correct? Because not every volunteer firefighter does the same thing, right? There's not the requirement for it. And the reason I believe this is important for the charter, Madam Chair, is that if the district trustees are in charge of the district and organizing and funding, we need to be able to make sure that the organization protects volunteer firefighters as well as career firefighters. Would you be willing to have a training standard throughout the community? Because an emergency scene does not care if you get paid or don't get paid, does not care. But if we're going to be safe as possible, there needs to be a training standard that everyone must meet if you're an interior firefighter. Would you agree with that?
Yes. If we're talking interior firefighting, that's a different game.
That's what I'm talking about.
But yes, as far as interior firefighting, as far as your fit test thing, I was never made aware that you were actually capable of doing that, because 90% of my department is interior firefighting capable. And they actually want to do it. Like, that's their game. Mm-hmm. Now, we all know also, me and you, I'm talking to you now, we know there's very, very different levels of volunteer fire service. Some people might be driver operators. Some people might be tender operators. Not everybody is interior fire. Some people prefer wildland. We need all of these people. That's also part of the glories of a volunteer fire department is, for me, I have a couple of older people that can't do interior fire attack. and they're the favorite people in the department because they're the pump operators, and those younger guys that want to do interior fire attack don't have to stand at the pump and do pumping the engine. So there's those important people that we need in our thing. But yes, if we're talking interior firefighting, I would say a standard needs to be, would be an ideal thing. And I don't think anybody would disagree with you. For the safety of our own firefighters, it is a high priority for us also, so.
And Madam Chair, just to follow up, I believe a lot of these issues can be brought back to the Fire Advisory Board, where a lot more serious conversations need to be had that have been had for decades. That's the table that everyone talks about, how everyone needs to be brought to the table. That is the table. And it's been happening, but there needs to be honest conversations. And the reason I bring Fire Advisory Board up is because it is in our charter, and it's a good thing that it is in our charter, because it gives a voice to all fire members, regardless if the Director of Fire Services doesn't reach out or you don't reach out to the Director of Fire Services. So there is a channel to be used within our charter, and I would like for people listening and everyone on this body to realize that is what the Fire Advisory Board should do. Thank you.
Mr. Matter, when you're describing the Fire Council, is that the same as the Fire Advisory Board? I want to make sure I have the right bodies.
No, ma'am. Fire Advisory is different from the Fire Council. Fire Council is all members can attend and have a voice to speak. Fire Advisory consists of 3 career members, 3 volunteer members, and I believe 3 county commissioners? Yeah. And they're the ones that speak at that table. So they are different. I agree that it is a place, but we all have to come to compromises that for the last 50 years, we haven't been able to seem to find those compromises. And we need to find them, and we need to find them quick. Because the only people that we're hurting right now is the people of this community.
So in structure, the Fire Council is the volunteer Fire Council, correct? And that represents, all the chiefs are there. Who's at the Fire Council?
The Fire Council is supposed to be everybody, and anybody can be a part of that, including the career fire department. If they wanted members on that board, they could have them. They just have to show up to be part of the elections of that. Like I said, referring back to like Helena's Fire Council.
So there's a couple of structures at work. So
Yes.
there's the Fire Council and there's the Fire Advisory Board, and then the two sometimes meet together or don't meet together or don't communicate. I'm looking
No,
at the two of you in
those-
terms.
Just to kind of answer a little bit of that. So normally what happens at Fire Advisory or at Fire Council is they give what their issues are to the people that are on the Fire Advisory Board, and then they take that to Fire Advisory. But my thought would be Fire Advisory would be different if everybody participated in Fire Council. Like, we wouldn't have this bashing of heads constantly.
Okay, thank you.
My opinion.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick ask of Mr. Silk, and then I have a question. But could you let everyone know just what those acronyms that you used earlier when your last question, the LEPC and I think it was SVCA?
Sure, and thank you for that. That's, I've been doing it for so long, but it's the Local Emergency Planning Committee that there's a lot, and Ms. Shaw might know, some commissioners sit on that as well, and Dan probably knows it better than anyone because it is usually part of DES. So that's what that means. And the SCBA is self-contained breathing apparatus, the air packs that you wear when you go into a fire. Thank you for checking me on that.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that. That's good to know. So I want to go back to when you mentioned the broken equipment. You know, we've all, been talking, and last week Chief Osborne was very instructive on some of these things, especially the cap and the funding issues. But the fact that you had an engine broken for 8 years and then 4 years for an internet and fixers, we haven't reached the cap, so what is the issue there? Why is it taking so long to get things fixed? Are these things fixed now, all the 3 that you mentioned in your brief?
No, engine 77 is still not fixed. Engine 77 has had pump issues for the last 8 years. I call it feline 77 now because it's a cat. Some days it works great and other days it doesn't. It just isn't a dependable engine. It could go at any moment. We had an old mechanic, he ordered a new pump for it. That new pump went to the county shops. He left, a new mechanic came in, and that pump has never been put into that engine. I hope it's still sitting down at the county shops. I haven't got the answers to that. I have a multitude of issues on that truck, and just doesn't seem to be prioritized. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but something needs to be done. I did have an offer a while back for that engine to go to Kalispell to possibly get that engine that pump put in. A guy came in to do the pump testing, and he was offended that that engine wasn't working because he was one of the gentlemen that built that engine back in 06, 05 he built it. But, so yeah, no, I do have a roof on my station now. We did find out that it is still leaking, so I have holes in my roof. We have stopped renting out our fire hall due to those holes in the roof. Because now I'm afraid that there may be black mold in the ceiling. I do have 2 giant holes where it was leaking into the building, and I haven't gotten those addressed yet either. And yes, my internet was finally fixed, but it did take 4 years to get that accomplished. And I will give Director Osborne some credit for that. He did send out a lot of emails in order to get my internet fixed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to question 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tui, what changes, if any, in governmental structure, organization, or powers would help the volunteer fire department address their most critical problems?
Elimination of the Director of Fire Services position. Make it the Butte-Silver Fire Chief. If the body thinks that we need somebody to be a liaison between the two, make it a commission on fire or something other than the director, and move that office away from Station 1. Move that office anywhere but Station 1. Courthouse here, DOJ, wherever. It just needs to be an office outside and away from Station 1 and away from any volunteer department. I also wouldn't want it in a volunteer department either. So, and just following state charter, we gave a list of all the ones that we think that need to be crossed off there. I do feel like Kate here shortly will talk a little bit more about those, but those are my big ones.
Mr. Dennehy?
So Tui, what's your, I guess, verbal change from the fire chief to fire coordinator to director of fire services? Or can you delineate for me the differences? Is it verbiage?
It's more verbiage than anything. I'm not trying to say the position is necessarily the problem. The idea of the position is the problem. Give the volunteer fire chiefs a little bit more credit than what they're being given. And hopefully maybe fire advisory and these types of things will actually be able to coordinate these things a whole lot better. I think, this is once again a personal opinion.
Sure.
Personally, I think that the elimination of that position completely and then chiefs deal with chief issues. maybe that's a bad idea, and maybe we do need some sort of liaison between them. So I was just trying to look at a different name, whether it be a commission on fire or somebody. Preferably not even somebody associated with the fire service. If we could find an outside person, that would even be better, because then they don't have bias one way or the other. I guess now's the best time to say it and get that elephant out of the room. I felt like last week was nothing but a giant attack of the volunteers are terrible, and it was a continuous attack on how volunteers are terrible. So clearly, he doesn't want to direct both sides of this. He's a great fire chief for Butte-Silver Bow. He doesn't want to direct the volunteers, I feel. And that's a personal opinion. I'm aware of that. But we need somebody that's going to be non-biased on both sides. Doesn't matter whether you're a career or volunteer, they're going to be a neutral party to say, all right, let's get things accomplished. Let's actually come to the table and sit down. If we can't do it as grown adults and not argue about it, then you can leave and send somebody else that can sit down as a grown-up, and we'll have a conversation. Personal opinions.
I recognize there's a lot of passion there, so, and we understand that there's different opinions and different viewpoints. So we appreciate you looking for the solution in there as well, in terms of looking for somebody unbiased. Mr. Silk, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I probably have a couple questions, but one of the questions is the document you provided for the edited change to the charter, and under Section D of MCA 733, Part 21 and 23 and 2001. And I imagine your lawyer will be able to explain to us what that is, but correct me if I'm wrong, that a rural fire department is supposed to organize, fund, and run the department by themselves. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay, so if you want these recommended changes, then your district, you would have to have a separate mill levy in your own particular district to run your organization. And do you think you would have enough funds to pay for workman's comp, fuel, maintenance, and PPE with facilities as well?
I believe so, but I can't. I haven't had a budget. We haven't had a budget since 1977, so I can't answer that. Do I believe that we could? Yes. Prior to consolidation, Racetrack was living high on the hog. When I joined, Racetrack had 2 fairly new engines. At the time of consolidation, I mean. When I joined, those engines were still in existence. One was a 1969 and one was a 1973. And we ran those trucks until our new trucks came in 04 and 06, respectively. So yes, and before that, Racetrack had bought a new engine almost every other year. So do I think that we'd have the money? Yes. Is that the solution? I don't know. But we have to come to something, because where we're at isn't working.
I totally. Madam Chair, a follow-up on that, as Ms. Casey lets us rock out to her music. I guess being a part of a body that was elected at large to form the government structure, as you said in other meetings, and the backbone of our community can't be based off of I think. These numbers need to be run to make sure that Racetrack might be able to, because it's a larger district. Can Home Atherton, can Floral Park, can these other departments run if you were to get your budgets back and be totally separated from Butte-Silver Bow and not receive any Butte-Silver Bow money? So, and if that's the route that the public wants to go, they get a vote on that. That's great. That's why we're here. But when we go out and inform the public of these changes, we have to be able to say, yes, this department can function because it's separate from Butte-Silver Bow, or no, it cannot function without Butte-Silver Bow's help. So that was more of a comment than anything, that if we are to disjoint fully from the volunteers under these parts of law, that we need to be able to make sure they maintain their money to be able to run the tenders, to have PPE, to be able to help the career department. Because I will say this openly right now, and I am not afraid to say it at all. The career department cannot survive without the volunteers, and the volunteers cannot survive without the career department. That's the way that it is, and it's the way it's always going to be in Butte-Silver Bow. So to be able to just totally go independent of autonomy, which you want within these parts of law, and it's a charter change, we need to make sure that you will be able to fund yourselves appropriately. So that's just a comment, Madam Chair.
I'll start with Mr. Dennehy and come back.
Everybody says shut it off, and I talk, hey, okay. So anyway, part of the charter amendments that you struck, whatever, struck, thank you. Anyway, from whether it was your attorney or how you did that, I appreciate the clarity of that. But in subsection F of the strike portion of the charter, it said the paid fire chief shall be the director of fire services. You talked a little bit about that. And shall be responsible for the administrative coordination. Even last week, Director Osborne didn't really know what that really entailed because it's such a general term. In combination of the paid and volunteer fire departments, fire prevention, and code enforcement. So my question is that do you think one person, and I think I know the answer to this, but I didn't get it clearly or I didn't hear it clearly, that one, along the lines that the volunteer fire departments will be under command and control of the Director of Fire Services, and why or why not? And the question I have is how many chiefs fire chiefs are there in the volunteers? 8? 8 fire chiefs and 8 volunteer fire departments, is that correct? 9?
I believe there's 9.
Okay, so there's 9 fire chiefs for 9 volunteer fire departments. And each one of the fire chiefs will have authority and direct control out of their volunteer fire departments. And your idea would be that's a better alternative than having one span of control with one person who's the boss?
Yes.
And could you tell me why?
I believe it would be better because we've had a director of fire services since, I believe, 1996, and it hasn't worked. Jeff was close. He kind of tried, and then he gave up a little bit, that he didn't want to try anymore. And I get it. It's tough dealing with that many different departments. And Zach, I don't feel, has tried much, and before that was Armstrong, and he didn't try at all. The volunteers, I can't put that lightly. There is no lightly way to put this. Hatred is learned. My very first fire I ever stepped onto, I was called a scab. That's a blunt force, right? I'm doing this for free. I'm doing this because I want to be better. I want to better my community. And that was the first thing I was called for, trying to grab a ladder off of the closest truck. Right? And don't get me wrong, this goes both ways. But that, I was called that. And it has happened on. And that was almost 30 years ago. Has it gotten better? Yes. But those guys taught the youngers. And it just goes down the line. And there's anger issues involved in that we're trying to steal their jobs. We're trying to, and it's not that. Those guys that were that way 30 years ago all happily retired and are living on retirement, which is great. I'm happy for them, and I don't hold that resentment. But I feel like that's why I suggested it being taken out of Station 1. So it's not in that environment, and there's not that type of feeling. I've worked so hard to try to build a relationship with the career fire department. I've tried in every sort of certain way I possibly can. And over the last 2 years, I feel like I've gotten slapped back for it. That I've gotten pushed down. I used to bring donuts up there all the time, lay them out on the kitchen table, until one day I was called an idiot for doing it. And that's where I'm at. Like, I've tried. Like, and there's been certain people that have tried. Chad's tried. We've tried. And I just don't feel like we've come full circle. And do we need to sit at a table and do it? Yes. But a director position, I feel, needs to be a separate position away. That's why I even suggested that it be somebody not even affiliated with the fire service. Somebody from outside that has nothing to do with either side. Because the volunteers can be just as bad, too. Like, some of them don't much care for career guys. So it goes both sides. And that's learned behavior from years and years and years.
Mr. Mattern, I'm going to bring us back to charter.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I appreciate the passion. I understand. And there's a lot of feelings and there's a lot of desire to make change. So we do need to continue with the focus of what we can do, what's in our jurisdiction, if you will, and that is the charter. I think I've said in almost every meeting, Mr. Silk might be able to tell me, but we've talked about, irregardless, we cannot mandate ethics from our chairs. We can only build structure. And so our intention is to build the best structure that we can to help you guys do your work, right? And so sitting down at the table together, as you said, being adults, working through the issues, figuring out the structure, given from charter into ordinance is your job, okay? You guys will have to do that work. We're here to try to figure out what it could be, if there should be any changes, and we let you guys go forward as is, or if we bring this to the voters with the possible changes to budgets and giving you budget authority, and then understanding what that could mean for our community. Because, when I think about adding levies, that's more taxes for local people, right? So I live in the Racetrack Fire District. I will support that levy, but I don't know that all of my neighbors would. So these are questions that we have to bring forward to voters too. So back to the charter and any of these suggestions. I think we kind of got off with in terms of your questions, and then I know Ms. Casey had. I think all three of you have follow-up, so I'll just go Ms. Casey, Ms. Dillon, Mr. Thielen, if we could.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question might be for County Attorney. Last week, I'm going back to Section D and these MCA codes. I thought last week with some of the information that Chief Osborne brought forward, some of the problem with the MCA code was that it did deal with rural, and there was a Attorney General's opinion that the career firefighters couldn't be subsidized by the volunteer. And 7 of the volunteer stations are within basically the urban area. And so if we were to look at a change like this, can we even do that, I guess? And I don't expect County Attorney to answer that tonight, but maybe that's something we could look at, because I believe in the information, I can't remember, but there was an Attorney General's opinion on that.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, am I on? Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Casey, are you speaking about the Attorney General's opinion with regards to the budgetary authority?
Yes, I believe so. And then I guess because these MCAs, aren't they where each volunteer fire department could levy their own levy? And does that conflict, I guess is what I'm asking, being that they are in an urban area?
So the Attorney General's opinion very clearly states out that when the city-county decided to consolidate that, and I had a copy of it here somewhere, decided to consolidate that there was an issue there with budgetary authority. His opinion specifically states that the volunteers have retained their budgetary authority according to statute, which is under Section 33. And the next one, if you're talking about Section D in 7-33-2105, yes, it specifically states that volunteer departments through their board of trustees are to prepare budgets and request special levies for their own funding. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's where a lot of that conflict is right now, is who has budgetary authority over what.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. I just wanted to, I think Chad's point about learning or finding out and giving the public more information about how a budget would run in racetrack and other fire halls is a great ask, because just from your comments that I've heard tonight, pre-consolidation, you were running great guns and doing work with your own budget. So to allow people that knowledge is a good thing, as well as the cap issues for the paid as well. So I think having all of that information is much better than not having it, obviously. But my question about the charter is, earlier tonight before the meeting, I was trying to find, and I couldn't find it, but, with HB 547, when it came out initially, it said it was for Butte and Anaconda. And then it kind of, as it made its way through the legislature, it was pretty much then just honed to kind of, Anaconda just dropped off the conversation, and it was just about Butte. And that said, my question to you tonight is, with regard to Anaconda's charter, and because they're the only other consolidated government in the state, big ones, I think Fergus County has one, but I'm not sure. Anyway, would you like our charter to be similar to to Anaconda's charter, where when they consolidated, they kept the fire department out of the charter? And I'm wondering your opinion about that change, if that's something you'd like to emulate, or you'd like to do, like you have at the beginning of this proposal, is just the edits of the language that's in the Butte-Silver Bow Charter. And does that make sense, that question?
Kinda. I feel like Kate would be able to answer that here shortly a whole lot better than I can, because I'm not a legalese kind of guy. I do know that the charters were different, or when they consolidated were different. There was like a type 1 and type 2, or 1 and 2, and Anaconda was a 2 and Butte was a 1. And so therefore they left the volunteer fire districts completely out of it. And there's nothing written in their charter necessarily about their volunteer fire districts as far as we could tell. It's all kind of about their career fire department. And they let the volunteer departments kind of govern themselves. So I could be wrong on this too. She'll be able to maybe answer that a whole lot easier than I would.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, thank you. Dewey, last week I asked Director Osborne whether or not he thought that maybe he was wearing too many hats. And this might be more of a comment, because some of you older guys might remember when JR or Northey was the Director of Fire Services, and they had an office in this building. And I believe things were probably a little smoother then than they are now. So when you guys get up here, maybe you can elaborate on that and let us know a little bit. I believe in that. I think that there should be an independent person, unless there can be like a united front where you guys finally put all your toys in the same sandbox and get along, quit throwing sand in each other's face.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll let them answer that, Ben. That was way before my time. You old timers.
And it is. Madam Chair, my next question is charter related. I guess if you want to be a separate entity and the district trustees run your independent rural fire district, the legislative body of Butte-Silver Bow would have no authority over the independent rural fire district. You would be able to have your own set of rules, your own standards that potentially could divide the career department and volunteers even more. So when you say that you want to go to these different parts of MCA, you're also saying that you don't want the Council of Commissioners to, you don't think you should abide by the ordinances within the city county, or am I misunderstanding that?
Once again, Chad, I can't answer those. I'm not smart about that, and I was going to have my legal expertise, Jason, here tonight, but he actually got called to be IC on the fire up in Helena. Okay. So I'm not the legal guy. Jason is the chairman of our Board of Trustees for Racetrack 2. And once again, I'm going to defer that Kate's here tonight.
And maybe, Madam Chair, can we defer to County Attorney Enruth, who is our county attorney? County Attorney, do you have any insight on that? And I don't even know if I formulated the question correct, but
Commissioner Silk, Madam Chair, Commissioners, so I believe what Commissioner Silk is getting at is whether or not if Butte-Silver was more like Anaconda Deer Lodge County, where the rural fire departments are governed by their own board of trustees, which is correct. The city county commissioners don't govern the rural districts in Anaconda. The rural districts govern themselves.
Oh, Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have a question. We did put something in the charter where they do their own levies. What happens to the urban fund? The urban fire fund, does that get reduced? Because a lot of the areas, we'll go back to Ray Lynn's area. She's in the racetrack, so she would support that levy. But then does the urban fire fund that we all pay now get reduced for our firefighters? I mean, are we just maybe, I guess, are we splitting hairs on some of these, and maybe it'd be better to have a different type of budgetary versus everybody gets their own levy? Because I would think that what we pay as an urban fire fund would also have to maybe get reduced, or are we going to support two types of fire funds? That's just a question of a tax when we're getting into taxation.
I don't have an answer on that one. I'll do some research and look.
And I think that might be something for our treasurer as well to look into. Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, County Attorney Enruth, question. So last week, Director Osborne spoke of a fire tax. So is the fire tax the same as Lori's question, the urban fire fund?
Again, without knowing the specifics of what you're both talking about, I can't answer that question. We'll need to talk with our treasurer. Yeah. We don't practice law off the top of our heads.
All right, folks, I'd like to continue with our questions, and because we do have your attorney is with you as well, so she might be able to go through the recommended changes that you guys have come to us with. Perhaps that might be the better form of questioning. Mr. Dennehy, could you take number 4, please?
Chief, what advice would you give the study commission in terms of conducting a comprehensive and impactful review of the local government?
That one's my easiest one.
They give me the easiest question. So.
The only advice I would give is be mindful. The changes that you make are long-lasting and could have multiple consequences. As my father-in-law says, measure twice, cut once.
Thank you. Any follow-ups? All right, Mr. Thielen, question 5.
I should heed his advice. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, question number 5. What inefficiencies could be addressed through changes in the local government structures?
So, I know that might not be the answer that you want or that you're looking for, but mutual aid agreements is my big one. And actually forming legit mutual aid agreements. And I set an example here of, I feel is a huge inefficiency in our response. I know that this isn't necessarily where that should be, but my example is the corner of Texas and Grand. Everybody knows where the corner of Texas and Grand is. They get 3 trucks on initial response and 6 to 7 firefighters. You go up 2 blocks to Carolina and Grand, and they get 5 trucks and potentially 20 plus firefighters. This is a personal thing too, I get it, but I don't like the separate fire services. I don't like that we're providing 2 separate fire services when we could have mutual aid agreements that actually allow us to provide that service across the board. If they don't need us, they can call us off, which is great. But I don't like the two separate services. I don't like that people are getting different services. And we don't have mutual aid agreements, and that is a giant thing that needs to happen. Does that happen in the charter? Probably not. That needs to happen once again with collaboration. Maybe this isn't the place to do it, but it has to happen. Has to happen to help provide the best possible service for all of Silver Bow County, not just part of it, all of it.
Follow-up questions? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to ask Mr. Dennehy if he could ask his question about the commission and the chief executive. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Dolan. Appreciate that. So this is for the group. One of the major questions that we had, not specifically with the fire department, but two issues. One, do you believe that the chief executive form of government is appropriate, or would you like to see a city manager form of government? That's one. The other is the number of council of commissioners. And throughout our process, it's been discussed whether or not 12 is too many. And throughout our process, should they be full-time commissioners or part-time commissioners? And I don't know how you would like to answer that, Chief, but those are the two questions that I usually get asked to ask you. So if you would. And if you feel uncomfortable about that, that's fine too. So
I don't feel like I've shied away from any question yet, so I guess I won't shy away from this one. No, I don't think that the chief executive or city manager, we just need better leaders. Period, the end. I had a quote that I was going to put out there that culture reflects leadership. I feel like our culture is broken. And I feel like that's a direct correlation with leadership. Do I have an opinion on the county commissioners? Yeah, I would love to see them have a little bit more power. So maybe the chief executive wasn't bowling over the top of them. And maybe if that means that they're full-time positions, then so be it. Once again, my expertise doesn't play into this. I'm great with fire. I'm great with understanding how to fight fire. And hey, I work at A&M Fire and Safety. If you guys want some safety supplies, I'm great at that too. But this isn't my area of expertise necessarily. I was here to talk about how my fire service works and not how your county works.
Well, we appreciate you, and you're part of our county as a citizen too. So we're asking our citizens for their opinion as we consider these issues. So thank you for providing it. All right, we're on to number 6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So number 6 question is, what challenges do you foresee for Butte-Silver Bow in the next 10 to 20 years? And does the current government structure position government structure position the city-county to meet those challenges effectively?
The biggest challenges I see over the next 10 or 20 years is going to be consolidation of fire districts as far as the fire service goes. Because the only way that happens is if we're all one. And we finally come to the table and we come to some agreements and we actually start working together. That's the only way that we can do it properly. And that's a challenge for us. And I don't feel like the current atmosphere allows that to happen. I feel like House Bill 547 was trying to force that. And it would have been ugly on the flip side. I don't know what your volunteer fire service would have looked like on the flip side of that. So our current structure isn't really set for that. But in 10 to 20 years, that conversation needs to be a pretty hard and long, hard looked at. We're entering the process of that, but we're just in the infant stages, and nowhere near actually really sitting down and getting that accomplished. Because we need all of us. Chad said it. The career fire department can't do it without the volunteers, and the volunteers can't do it without the career fire department. Not without costing the taxpayers a whole lot of money. So we have to start collaborating, and we have to do it now. There's no wait. I know that this study commission could take 2 or 3 years before it's on the board. We don't have that time. We don't have that luxury. We need to sit down now, and we need to start getting this done.
Follow-up questions? Mr. Silk?
I'm sorry, I usually don't talk this much, but since it is a department I'm involved in, retired Chief Jeff Miller brought up consolidation when he first got appointed as the Director of Fire Services. Can you explain how that was perceived through the volunteers? Because it's what you're talking about now. My fear is in 10 to 20 years, this problem is still happening. You said that we're in the infancy stages. We've been in the infancy stages since before consolidation. I have a letter here from 1973 about how we don't have any problem with the career department. It's not the city firemen, but we have a problem with the administration. That's from before consolidation. So this has been a huge problem. I guess my question is, would you be willing to have a charter change where every fire service, every fire department was under the direction of the fire services, who has to follow ordinances set by the legislative body of this community? And if not, how come?
No.
Okay, I figured that's what it was. But.
No, because we have our own governing bodies, and we have our own laws under the state of Montana that would govern us. And once again, Kate's back here, she's going to talk. But going back to, Jeff did talk about that, but we were nowhere ready to actually start talking about it. Because we had to be together as one before it even begins to happen, before it even gets there. And we've split. I don't know if you've noticed what the fire service looks like lately, but we've split. You know, our communication is broke down on fire scenes, that we're not talking to each other. You've been on enough fire scenes with me that you know how I operate. You know that I pace around and I do face-to-faces. Our last couple of fires.
Madam Chair, if we want to get into these opinions, I have a lot of opinions.
Sorry,
but when we're talking
a lot
about
of
the
them
charter, the question was.
So yes, I'm getting back to that we just weren't ready to consolidate. And we weren't ready to talk about it. And now we need to start approaching it. We need to start. But we still need to come together.
Mr. Dennehy?
Just for my own edification, when you're talking about consolidation, what are we talking about? Are we talking about consolidating the 9 volunteer fire stations or fire departments into 2? Are we I understand too that we haven't gotten there yet, but is those discussions with the volunteer fire departments ongoing at this time, or is there a plan somewhere?
There's no plan. There's no plan because we've just kind of very little started talking about it. What it would look like, I don't know. There's lots of, once again, opinions that I could have. Would it be great to have one volunteer fire service governed by one board of trustees? Maybe. Maybe that's the way we go. I don't know. But there's interlocal agreements that we could start talking about and actually start focusing towards. And then that's the infancy stages of consolidation.
I'm sorry. Wouldn't you think, just as an advisory, wouldn't you think we could use the advisory committee composed of 3 paid, 3 volunteers, and the 3 council of commissioners as a part of that discussion, as a part of the, there's a lot of no, we can't do that.
No.
And
No.
why not?
We could use fire council
Okay.
as that. but not fire advisory, because we'd all have to be able to sit at the table and have to be able to have a voice in that actually happening. And then it would have to turn around and go to the voters. And 40% of the voters of each one of those fire districts would have to vote in favor of that. So
Okay.
it's not an easy process, and it's a long process, and it doesn't happen very often.
Okay, but in the charter, there's the fire commission consisting of 5 members from the general public, right? And that's testing and test applications for the fire service director here, try, and charges brought up against the, I'm sorry, I'm turning my paid fire department. So that's, the fire commission is part of the organizational structure of the paid fire department. So you don't believe, and what's the difference between the advisory committee and the fire council? Is there, fire councils consistent of volunteer fire people?
Fire council is supposed to be consistent of all of us. Currently, it's just the volunteers that show up, but it's supposed to be all of us that are sitting down at the table. And the idea would be that all of us, including police department, sheriff, A1, or search and rescue, would all be involved in that. Currently, we're not there. But fire council is all of us sitting down at the table. Fire advisory, like I said before, was 3 career guys, 3 volunteers, and 3 county commissioners. They don't necessarily carry the voice for everybody. So therefore, talking about consolidation or interlocal agreements, that's not the place.
Just how large do you think this fire council should be? I mean, we're talking, is there, everybody comes to the table?
Heck yeah.
Okay, so in your experience, when everybody is at the table, you hammer out a good policy?
I feel like it would be.
Okay.
I've gone to other cities' fire councils and watched them work, and I've actually seen how cooperation and collaboration can actually make things better and actually start progressing the fire service.
Okay, appreciate that.
Mr. Thielen, I have a quick question, and then I'll take yours. We have this local emergency planning committee. Is that another sort of fire council? I'm trying to get a hold of all of this because it seems like that group could be utilized more effectively or maybe enlarged. Mr. Dennehy, can you answer that?
Yeah, it's under the Emergency Services Department. It is a monthly meeting that happens, not particularly with fire. Fire department's there, and volunteers, when I were there, were invited to the LEPC's meetings. But it's also with planning, it's also with sheriff, it's also through the judiciary, it's also superintendent of schools, it's also with fire or ambulance services. So it's a broad, and it's also with the council of commissioners, also with the chief executive. So it's a broad range of people coming together to talk about emergency services. So it's not just fire related, it's everyone coming together with what is our emergency action plan? What is our worst hazards that are out there, and having those discussions and how you deal with those.
Okay, so the Fire Advisory Council is more directed just with these issues related to the volunteers and career, et cetera. Okay, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. I'm sure everybody watching YouTube is also going, how many committees do we have and how many people serve on all of those? Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, thank you. Tui, I kind of want to go back and ask you about this consolidation. And basically, is it better for the community? Is it safer if everybody's consolidated and on the same page? Obviously, I think it would be.
I can't answer that with certainty. I could have my opinions on it, but I don't. Would it be safer? I don't know. If we did it, could we have more volunteers responding on certain calls? Possibly. But it all comes down to leadership and how it's done. So those are impossible questions to answer, because who knows? Who knows what it would look like? And 10 or 20 years, it still might not be a reality.
Follow up. So I guess basically what it comes down to, in my mind, is safety for you guys, and that's paramount. And if you guys are safe and you're doing your jobs right, then it makes the community safer. And if consolidating is going to do that, then that's the way it should be looked at, I would think.
I'd agree. Definitely something that needs to be looked into to see if it would provide a better service.
All right, one more. Mr. Selk.
So I just want to bring up the leadership question. I don't want to be on the headlines tomorrow that Director Osborne, who is an amazing leader, who is bringing up these questions, who is having these hard conversations, whether people like to have them or not, being a leader, that's what they do. So I want to make that very clear. Other leaders and other administrations have tried to fix this problem and have not been able to fix it because the autonomy of volunteers separate from Butte-Silver Bow. That is what it comes down to. In other organizations that you speak of where everything works together, it's because there's a clear chain of command. And that's why. And we know that. That is how emergency services works. So I want to make it clear that you mentioned it was a dig last week that Director of Fire Services did do towards the volunteers. I didn't feel that. And I could say the same thing on this meeting. But with that being said, I'll yield back to the Madam Chair of let's focus on why we're here and not try to throw digs at individuals, because these individuals who have been tasked to deal with this problem, it's an impossible problem to fix if there's no clear authority. That's why it hasn't been fixed. People much smarter have came before us that would have fixed it, that couldn't, because legally we can. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to just ask you about, with the charter right now, it talks about Fire Advisory Board, and it doesn't mention the Fire Council. So it was great tonight to get from you the clarification, and with Dan's input with the local emergency meeting that they have every month, to kind of decipher what meeting does what. But my question to you that's charter related is, I want to know, if we keep this Fire Advisory Board language in the charter, I want to go back to 2015 through 18 when I was a county commissioner, and the Fire Advisory Board at that point in time just blew up. And I don't know the reason for that. Can you let us know why that was, and what was it? Was it just this continuation of no communication that did that? Because that's the board that has the commissioners on it, and I know they were just, they didn't know what to do, and they just kind of walked away because they just didn't know what to do with that. Do you have any insights on that for us?
I don't. The next person coming up is Ed Fisher. He probably is going to have a little bit more insight on that, as he is the president of the Fire Council. So he might actually be able to answer that a whole lot better than I can.
All right, is there any other follow-up questions for Mr. Mattern? Okay. And you were bringing up Mr. Bury?
Yeah, no, I'm going to bring up Ed Fisher,
Okay.
Chief of the Boulevard Fire Department.
Okay,
Right now.
perfect.
I thank you guys for your time.
I guess I won't have to talk long then, huh? Just a little history. My name's Ed Fisher. I'm the Chief of the Boulevard Fire Department. I've been a volunteer fireman for 51 years. I was drafted into the Army, and I chose to go to the Marine Corps. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I worked for Butte-Silver Bow for 30 years, retired from Butte-Silver Bow Metro Sewer, and I'm president of the Silver Bow Fire Council. And I'm here to speak tonight on the main thing. I know the committee here is to want to look at the charter and things that need to be changed. I do think that we have a little leadership problem, and I think it's too much work for one person to try to work with one career department and 9 volunteer departments. That's going to be over 150 personnel, and that's a big ask. And I can stand here and say I have 20 in the volunteers in my department, and it's a big ask to keep them going down the road straight. So I can't imagine what Zach has to put up with trying to deal with 140. So I do think that power has to be separated, and whether it's the way that the government is structured or what they ever thought. But I'll go back to Mr. Thielen when he asked about the fire coordinator. In 1977, when they unified the charter, or had the charter, they had a fire coordinator, and it was Northie Trethway. You're absolutely right, Ben. His office was here in the courthouse. And the way it worked then is if Ed Fisher, as the chief of Boulevard, needed anything, I came up here and talked to Mr. Trethway. If Zach Osborne, the chief of the career department, needed anything, he'd come up here and talk to Northie Trethway. He was the person that made the decisions where the money was spent and how the fire department was run. So when we speak about a person that is kind of a middleman or somebody to direct the fire service, I think we're going to have somebody in there that can direct the fire service in the right direction. And I don't think we want to play the fact that we want a career guy in there or we want a volunteer in there, because we can see what happens today is we keep saying problems, problems, problems. But has anybody heard what the problem is? Well, I don't know what the problem is, and I belong to the organization. And I keep hearing, we got to solve these problems, we got to solve these problems. But I've never seen a problem written on a piece of paper ever. I mean, we've heard safety, we've heard training, we've heard management, I've never seen a problem written on a piece of paper that somebody formally took to the 12 people that usually sit in these seats. So to start out with, I think we have to get the leadership deal squared away, and then the volunteers and the career department have to sit down and see what's wrong first. It's kind of run under a little bit of dictatorship now because we don't have no money. The career don't have no money, the volunteers don't have no money. Butte-Silver don't have any money. So everybody's kind of in the same boat here. And I'll just give you, like, the firemen that are in the Boulevard Fire Department. They don't agree a lot with what goes on because of the response plan. They get up at 2 o'clock in the morning when their pager goes off to go to a call, and then they get told to stay at the station. They didn't sign up for that. They signed up to be a volunteer, to go out and answer the call, do the best they can to help the community. It's the same as all you people on this volunteering for this board now. I bet you're sitting there thinking, why did I sign up for that? And even want to get elected to it. So it's a thing that I think can be ironed out, but we have to know what the problem is. We can't fix what we don't know what we're trying to fix. And evidently, we've heard Mr. Silk say, well, you know, he's trying to solve a problem, but we haven't heard the problem. We got to know what the problem is. I'll stand here as a veteran and as a volunteer fireman for 50 years, and I'm not throwing anybody underneath the bus, but in the volunteer ranks, these people have jobs. They have to go to work every day. They have to go take care of their family. I'm not cutting on career guys. They go to the job, yeah, they have 24 hours to train or answer calls or whatever it takes. But for us to go put in 8 to 10 hours a week of training, it's almost impossible. Because pretty quick that lady sitting at home is going to say, you ain't coming home no more, you might as well stay down the fire station. I've heard that many times. If you're going to live down there, move down there. So volunteering is a big thing, and I think that we have to understand it. And I think the problem we talked about for however many years they're talking about, I've never heard the problem. We got to figure out what the problem is. And leadership, we've heard it 2 or 3 times. I've heard it up here at commission meetings. I heard it in Helena, that it's a leadership problem. Well, if we have a leadership problem, maybe that's where we got to start. But nothing's going to get solved with leadership. Nothing's going to get solved with response. Nothing's going to get solved until we sit down and discuss it. And I'll tell you, it's never been brought up to sit down and discuss it. And our council will speak of that later. I know that she's invited 2 or 3 times to sit down and discuss it. and it never came to fruition. So that's where I get that we have a leadership problem. If they don't think it's important enough to discuss, then how are we ever going to fix it?
Mr. Fisher, we can make recommendations, and so would you find it valuable if this body made a recommendation that perhaps there's a special commission about the fire consolidation and the leadership and looking through all these things, that perhaps the Council of Commissioners were to convene? Would you find that helpful? Like we ask for them to take it on, essentially?
Well, I don't know if you need a special commission. And we talk about the Fire Advisory Board. We talk about the Fire Advisory Board being a place to go. Well, it really isn't, because the board is advisory. And the charter states it's an advisory to the Director of Fire Service. So if the advisory board goes and meets and they say, let's do this, and the Director of Fire Service says, no, we're not, it's dead. It never comes to fruition, never gets discussed. It's no different than if it's money. If it's money and they say we'll use TUI, we need a new pump for our truck. If the Director of Fire Service says, no, I'm not going to do it, he doesn't do it. So I think that the fact that we have to have somebody that's in charge, and I'll agree with Chad, we have to have somebody in charge. But I'll bet you Chad can also agree that Zach has got a big responsibility taking care of a career fire department, other than trying to take care of other departments. I think he's too spread thin. And we got to have somebody with some, that can handle the day-to-day business of the volunteers and the career, and not worried about going on fire calls or not worried about this. In 1976, before they unified the charter, they had discussed how it worked with the county commissioners. At that time, my father was the chief of the Boulevard, and he would submit to the 3 county commissioners. We had 3 county commissioners at that time in Silver Bow County that run the county. And he would submit a budget every year, just like volunteers submit a budget every year. And those 3 commissioners would make a decision on how much of the budget was approved. And at that time, I think a meal was worth, I think I read in there, was worth $148. So the budget for the Boulevard Fire Department was about $184,000 at that time. So then when he turned in that budget and say we had to pay for fire hydrants at that time. We had to pay for just about anything there was. So when he'd turn in a bill and he'd say we need 10 fire hydrants, and the bill would be at that time $3,500. And then he would send that in, and then the commissioners would approve it. Well, now we don't have that. We only have one person that's improving it. We can't come up here, even to the Council of Commissioners, and ask for something unless it's approved by the Director of Fire Service. And the Director of Fire Service is busy doing his fire chief work at the fire station. So he's not really giving justice to either. So that's why I think the powers need to be split. And I would welcome any of your questions, and I'll try to keep it short.
Follow-up
Thank you.
questions? Mr. Sill?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Grady, for
Yeah, Chad.
being up here. You know, the reason I got in the fire service was because of the volunteers. Dave Ludi,
Correct.
who worked at CED at the time, and I'm not going to go down a sad road here, but that is how I got into the volunteers, and that is how probably 75% of the career department has been formed, is through volunteers. You know, I believe, and you brought up a good point about what are the problems. I think this body should ask the Director of Fire Services to put those problems down on paper so we all know what those problems are, because I heard some people say, when Mr. Fisher said, what are the problems? And people said, we don't know. Let's list those problems out. If there are true problems within our community, let's list them out so we're all talking about the same thing. Because there are problems that can be fixed. The problem is the authority delegating to say, you're going to do this or you're not going to do that. I somewhat disagree with the Director of Fire Services being able to oversee the 9 volunteer fire departments. Because in every other part of the country, there's a fire chief that is in charge of multiple fire departments. Even our own public works director is in charge of 10 different departments. So it definitely is doable with a chief that represents that fire department and can carry out the message, span of control. It's 101 in the fire service. So I just want to bring up some of those comments. And the Fire Advisory Board is advisory, and it's always been contentious. And I imagine the commissioners in this room, including Dan Callahan, it's not a sought after advisory board to be on by a council of commissioners. There's some commissioners who get appointed to that and don't show up because of how contentious it is, because it can't go anywhere. Again, if people could have figured out these problems prior, they would have done so, but legally we can't. The ultimate advisory board is the Council of Commissioners, who sets the law within our government, and also the law that the Director of Fire Services has to follow. He doesn't get a choice. He might get a choice in saying that racetrack volunteer fire department engine isn't going to get it fixed right now because a career engine doesn't work right now either. So when we talk about prioritization, the people going on all the calls get the money. I don't know how you fix that problem, and I know you would agree with that. He has an impossible situation. He's reached his cap. He has no authority on independent rural fire departments. When we talk about the response plan, a response plan can't even be implemented because you as Boulevard Fire District can run how your trustees deem the correct way to run, correct?
Correct.
So having all of that in the air, it's impossible for Mr. Callahan as a commissioner to even enforce ordinance for the volunteers to follow. Because if we were to follow the ordinance, it says in the ordinance that the Director of Fire Services has command and control over career staff and volunteer staff, but we don't even follow that because we can't, because our charter doesn't specifically state that. So that is in a nutshell of the problem, and I don't want to keep reiterating that. Again, I would love to stay after and answer questions on that, because this is a very complex issue. And Madam Chairman, I yield back because we haven't even got to question 1, so I just wanted to bring those up.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chad, for that. We just need to remember that we, as a study commission, cannot fix problems. I'm sorry. As much as, I wish we could, we are here to do 2 things: review and recommend. I have to call them the 2 R's. But we do. It's a fine line, because we want to hear from you. We want to know what is happening, but it's so easy for us to kind of go off in little
Correct.
rabbit holes, and I just want to make sure that, time is at an essence. We love having this is the most people we've seen here by 10 times so far. We've been meeting since January 21st. So thank you all for coming. And it means a lot to me to see that. But we can't fix the problems. All we can do, and I appreciate the fact that we have what you think is, what might help, even part of it or all of it or none
Correct.
of it. But because we don't really know, and this was very helpful. So I just want to make sure that we stay on, on the script of the study commission, and we can't fix problems, and the voters are ultimately going to decide. And we want to make sure we make really good, thoughtful, and researched recommendations, and that's what we're here for. And it's not going to be an easy job. Is John Sorge still here? You can tell him it's not going to be easy, but again, I don't mean to just kind of keep whipping around to this circle, but we
Correct.
need to make sure that that's what's said. And this information is extremely important. It's same thing with Chief Osborne's information from last week. It's important to have, because when I was a commissioner, I hated it when nobody else would tell me what they thought, because for me to make a decision based on me, it was a no-win situation. But but I just want to make that comment, and I appreciate all of you being here. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a comment, and I have a quick follow-up question for Mr. Fisher. I'm guilty of, as charged, and I don't mind being so. I ask a million questions every week, but I don't want us to veer into, and nothing against Mr. Silk, I know he's passionate as well, to get into testimony versus questions with regard to these tough issues. But that said, do you think, Mr. Fisher, that the language in the charter should include or continue to include, and I might be wrong, I've just read so many charters this week trying to get caught up, but in essence, to have in our charter, once it's updated, have a line of language that includes or differentiates between a fire chief and then having someone like a Mr. Trethewey, who was years ago, and having that position back again. Would you like to see that? Is that something you all would like to see?
Yes, Ms. Dolan. That's why in my comment period, I think that the separation of power has to be split there, and it has to be done in the charter. And it kind of puts, we keep saying the problem, but it kind of puts the issue back to this person, whoever it may be, on a fair playing field. The volunteer fire chief can go see whoever this is, the fire coordinator. The career fire chief can go see this person, and they can both explain what they need and what they want and what they have to have, and then it's on an even playing field. And like I said, I'm not going to get into anything that goes on or how it goes on, but I think the even playing field is what we need. And it's as Chad has said over there, that the state law, sometimes it's trumping it over, and sometimes the charter is read wrong way. So if we start changing the way that the structure is of the government in the charter, and I know it's been brought up at these meetings about the 12 commissioners or 5 commissioners or 3 commissioners or whatever. I'll reiterate this, say again that I think less commissioners that work full-time would be more involved in what goes on in the government, because they have to worry about that person coming up them steps to talk to them, and they have to either give them a time on the agenda, or they have to answer their question. So it's the same thing with a person that you're going to have as a fire coordinator. If I get a chance to go sit down in his office and me and him discuss what's going on, and say the career chief comes up and discusses what he's going on in his, he's got a full blend of what's going on in the fire service. And let him make that decision, what is needed and what isn't needed, how the money is spent. And I think that's what is needed, is the separation of powers.
Okay, so I want to get us to the questions, and I know you've kind of answered some of them, so
Correct.
It's fine to just say, I think I've already answered that. And I'll start with Ms. Casey, if we could, with number 1. And we've heard about the responsibilities, but if you want to add to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fisher, Chief, the first question, what are the specific responsibilities and duties of the Butte-Silver Volunteer Fire Department Chief?
Well, I think Tui answered a lot of it, but a lot of it that we don't see that's out of the firearm is somebody has to clean the halls, somebody has to take care of the ground around the halls, which is mowing the grass, mopping the floors, cleaning the bathrooms, washing the trucks, fueling the trucks, make sure if the truck's got to go for service, they're taken care of. And pretty much anything that's got to do that you do around your home, you have to do around the fire station, except I don't do their laundry. They're on their own for that. But the duties are the same. If you own property, you know what it takes. You have to keep it up and maintain it. Somebody has to do it. You can designate it to somebody, but that doesn't make sure it'll get done.
Excellent. Can we take number 2, Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have to say, my home is within Home Atherton, and they're wonderful. So I just had to say that, because I live right around the corner, and it's nice to have that security when you're right around the corner from a fire station, wherever that fire station may be, paid or volunteer. I'm sure Butte-Silver would agree with that. So what are the critical problems presently confronting the volunteer fire department?
I think the volunteers' problem right now is retention and recruiting of volunteers. It's very hard to get anybody to volunteer for anything anymore. I mean, I guess you people volunteered to put your name on the ballot, but you just can't recruit enough younger people to get involved in the fire service. A lot of people like to go to fire calls, and they want to call themselves a fireman, but they don't want to take the time it takes to create a fireman. So that's one of our bigger problems. And And like I said earlier, the response plan is kind of trickling a little bit down through the volunteer ranks. I've had guys say, well, I didn't show up last night because I wasn't getting out of bed to stand at the station, and that's pretty much what the issue is.
Any follow-up questions? All right, number 3, Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, again, Ed, I think you answered some of these, but if you want to elaborate on anything, it'd be great. What changes, if any, in governmental structure, organization, or powers would help the volunteer fire department address its most critical problems?
Well, as I answered before, I think that we have to separate the power between the career fire chief and the director of fire service. I think another problem, not only in the fire department, it's in Butte-Silver Bow, is communications. There's a very lack of communications in Butte-Silver Bow. And the reason I can say that is I worked for Butte-Silver Bow for 30 years. Well, Dan knows. Sometimes there's a lack of communication and something that could be fixed easy, but the lack of communication, and then pretty quick, it turns into a larger, bigger problem, and I think it's lack of communication, and maybe that's the problem we're having now, is communication.
Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Fisher, could you explain just the difference between, and maybe there isn't any, but I see you noted that we have 8 volunteer fire districts and 1 fire company. Is there a difference in what they do?
Yes, there is a difference, and I'll refer to Kate when she gets up here to speak of it. Little Basin Creek is a fire company. They don't have district trustees like all the rest of the fire departments. Every other volunteer fire department has 5 district trustees. And I guess just to elaborate on that, when we talked about election of fire district trustees, the clerk and recorder is the one that sends out the ad in the newspaper, the same as they do for school districts. It's in the newspaper, the Montana Standard. They send out an application for us to post in our fire hall windows or doors or whichever. And the election is held the same time as the school election. And if there is no candidates, and they are voted in by acclamation, the same as Ms. Perdue said about, or Ms. Dolan said about the school district. And the reason being is nobody wants them jobs. Nobody wants to be a district trustee. They don't pay nothing. So the district trustees are run through the Butte-Silver Bow clerk and recorders. They're advertised in the paper. Little Basin Creeks has a company, and I'm assuming Kate would probably be able to explain a little bit more. I think their monies are a little differently handled and their bylaws are different. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions? Okay, Mr. Dennehy, number 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Grady, I'm going off script here a little bit, asking you the question, and I know you have opinions, just because I know you. Talking about the chief executive versus a city manager, the same question I asked former chief that was here. And having, I think you talked a little bit about it, full-time commissioners versus a smaller number of commissioners. Could you let us know what's your thoughts on that?
My thought would be that I would be all in favor of whatever they decide to be, 3 or 5 full-time commissioners. And the commissioners would have the power. I guess I don't know how it would read or how the structure would be of it. But I think the commissioners, being they are the power of the county, they should be the ones that appoint the city manager and the mayor or whichever they call it. And probably in those appointments, they should have the power and authority that if they're not doing their position or there's something that went wrong in their position, they should have the power to release them. And the reason I say that is Dan remembers very well the deal over the public works director and the budget director of Butte-Silver Bow. And when they were terminated from their positions of change of leadership, then it caused a lot of suits. So I think that they went to the commissioners, and the commissioners had the full control of the mayor and the handshaker, or whatever they want to call them around the city.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Grady. Appreciate it.
You bet, Dan. Thanks.
Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just got a follow-up. I forgot what question we were on, but on number 3, Grady, can you, I asked Tui this as well. In your strike-throughs on the first page on Section D, and if you want to run under Montana rural fire law, do you believe that, one, the volunteers would be able to fund themselves appropriately with the special tax that they would implement within their district? And 2, is it okay, in your opinion, to not run under the authority of the executive branch of Butte-Silver and fall under the trustees? Thank you.
Well, I guess for one, on the financial end of it, none of us will ever know if they are able to, because as talking to my brother, which was the outgoing assessor, he has quite an opinion on how the tax structure is based here in Butte-Silver, and he knows a little bit about it, how it would be spread around. As far as the tax base coming in, to me, and this is only my opinion, the tax base would come in the same way as it did in 1976. There's a lot of thinking that before unification, that the volunteer fire departments, if they budgeted for $200,000, that they got it in their checking account. That ain't the way it worked. The money stayed in Butte-Silver's budget, and they were requested to get it out. They did not be able to sit there and say, oh, we need new tires, let's write a check for $5,000. That ain't the way it worked. The money was still in the budget office, collected by Butte-Silver, and it was dispersed by Butte-Silver by authority of the commission.
Sorry, Madam Chair. The executive branch for Butte-Silver would not have any, you would not have to follow the ordinance. You would follow the SOPs of your district trustees and be totally separate from Butte-Silver. Is that correct?
Well, I think there's a part here that they could put together, and it could possibly work for everybody, is the fact that once all chiefs are on the same playing field, and say when it came budget time or it came any kind of purchase time or whatever, we have trustees. We have 5 in each department. Well, if they have a chairman of that trustees, maybe one of those trustees from each department, which would be 8, and then maybe one from Little Basin Creek, and the paid chief, they can sit down and figure it out. They can both approach this same person, or even the government. I know you're talking about inside the charter itself, but I think there could be something written in the charter that one trustee from every department. I think Ms. Randall brought it up earlier about having some kind of a commission. Well, if that commission was one trustee from every department plus the paid fire chief, that commission might be able to hold up. They might be able to get something done, you know.
Okay, thank you.
So that's where I'd be with it, Chad.
Okay. Do you believe that we could have a system like that now, where a trustee from each individual department could meet with the chief executive and the director of fire services to go over your budget without going as far in the charter as to say that? Could that work now?
Well, I think we could set something up, I'll put it that way. But then we have to go back into the law, like you said, and then the charter has to be changed to set something up in the charter to follow a certain standard of law, the state law, which is there now, and the charter law, which is there now. And I think that could be hammered out.
Okay.
We dig into a lot of issues, and we say, well, he can't do this because he's the director and it says he can do this. We say, well, you can't do that. And I think a lot of that can be hammered out. I don't think it's as big a problem as people say it is. I mean, I heard fist fights once. I've been with the fire service for, like I said, 50 years. I've never seen fist fights on a fire call. I mean, so as soon as you start bringing it up, it's like having the riots in LA or people saying they heard of something 40 years ago, well, I can say I knew there was World War II, but I don't know nothing about it. So when somebody says, well, 40 years ago, these two guys were fighting on the street, well, a lot of the people ain't that old. They wouldn't know what was happening on the street 40 years ago. So that's kind of where I leave it.
And Madam Chair, just last follow-up. I appreciate you saying that. There's always this interpretation of, oh, well, I heard this, and that's
Yeah,
how it
correct.
was, when in reality, it probably wasn't. I just want to, I don't want the volunteers to get into a position, if we were to recommend to the charter of so the people can vote on it, and then have the volunteers departments fail because there's not enough funding. I guess that is where my concern lies from. I do not want the volunteers to go anywhere because we have 6 to 7 personnel on shift. Again, we need the volunteers need the career. I get a little nervous when we, and this is just a recommendation from you guys, and I appreciate that. But if we're going to follow this and rural fire districts are going to be fully autonomous with their own funding, I just really hope that if we go down that, because the public wants to, that we're able to fund those departments, because I don't know what would happen if we couldn't fund them. So thank you.
Okay, any other follow-ups there? All right. So, Mr. Silk, I think it's your question now. Number 5.
Okay. Madam Chair, thank you. Mr. Fisher, number 5, what inefficiencies could be addressed through changes to the local government structures? What inefficiencies could be addressed through changes to the local government structures?
Well, I'll go back to the communications. I think is a big thing in the service and all service for Butte-Silver Bow. And transparency is a big thing in Butte-Silver Bow. Hearing things after the fact don't set well with people. I think everybody's got to be up front. We just hit on it a little bit there last when we were in that last question there. Everybody's got to be up front and not do hearsay, and that's what has to happen with the government. What somebody says and they said they heard it from somebody else shouldn't even be brought up. If you didn't hear it or you weren't there, you probably should just let it go.
All right, number 6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last question for you.
Yeah, thanks,
Chief
Cindy.
Fisher? Well, you Fishers all look alike. You got Jim, you got Dan. I mean, goodness, I knew right off the street.
That must mean you see us up here too much.
Anyway, the question is, what challenges do you foresee for Butte-Silver Bow in the next 10 to 20 years? And does the current government structure position the county to meet those challenges effectively?
The structure of the government right now, I don't think will meet the 10 to 20 years. I don't know what the answer is 10 to 20 years, but everyone knows that Butte-Silver Bow is a retired community, and cost is a big thing. Whatever comes up to Butte-Silver Bow in the next 10 or 20 years, whether it be we have to raise taxes for this, we have to raise taxes for that, I don't think it's going to be there. And we don't want to lose what Butte-Silver Bow is. Butte-Silver Bow is a very tight community. I know the retired people, myself, and retired people in my neighborhood. They work every day. I got an 83-year-old man that helps me cut the lawn down at the fire station. And I don't dare tell him he can't. And we have 2 beautiful parks down there. I have another guy that moved into the neighborhood about 5 years ago, and he's helping with the parks and everything down there. So I think we've got to keep in mind for 10 to 20 years down the road, and this could be the start of it. We have to keep the government down as efficient as we can. Does every department run efficiently? I don't know. I think Mr. Denny, remember one time we had a efficiency expert come in or whatever it was and went around the job sites and to see what everybody was doing and how they were doing it. And I don't know how the word ever come out or how the answer come out, but it kind of got pushed away to the wayside. So evidently the answer wasn't correct. So.
I don't think he survived. No, just kidding.
But that's where we're at. And I think 10, 20 years down the road, this is a start to get the structure built the way it should be. And I think if there's anything in the charter that has to do with finances or or any studies or whatever it is that they have to be looked at for the long range for the person that's paying for it.
Excellent. Any follow-up questions? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks again, Ed, for coming tonight. And I just want to ask an overarching question, because this is kind of interesting with regard to the charter. You know, when they created and consolidated, I wasn't here then, but when they consolidated the government, they made a lot of, and we can tell from your packet tonight and the packet from last week, there was a lot of itemized things for just the fire department. And we've had this ongoing discussion with many weeks of meeting that the charter itself needs to be not that specific. It needs to have some generalities to it. But my question to you tonight is, knowing that, are you pro or con with the idea of the fire department in the Butte-Silver Boat Charter having all that specificity? Is that a good thing, or would you like it more general? I'll bet not with, like you said, the fire person, neutral person,
Correct.
Itemized. But beyond that, there's a lot of specificity right now. So if it were to change, would you like it to be more general? Does that give you, what does that look like for you and your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are, there's a lot of articles and ordinances of the charter that are there, and that's all they are, is there. They're never used. They don't go by them. So I'll use it for instance. I'm going to say it's about six years ago or 7 years ago. I think Chad was on the advisory board. We had discussed the facts of, I think it was the age thing, wasn't it, Chad, for to be a paid fireman was 35 or something. And then they had in the charter about career firemen working, and Dan Foley was the chairman of the advisory board. And he had brought it up, and I'm sure there's an ordinance in there dated for that time. He said, well, if we're not going by that, what's written in the charter, let's get rid of it. So they wrote an ordinance to get rid of it. And then I think what the study has to do right now, any ordinance that gets rid of something in the charter, they should get rid of what's in the charter. I mean, if there's language in the charter that states one thing and an ordinance that states another, that's a very confusing thing. Even right now, with you people that volunteered for this study commission, I tried to go through it and get some rhyme or reason out of it. What do I go by? Do I go by this thing that says it was the charter, or do I go by the thing that says we changed it by ordinance, or what do you actually go by? So I think I asked, Cindy, I think I asked you the question once, what do we go by? If we're going to change the charter, do we go by the ordinance, or are we going by the charter? So I think a lot of that has to be defined before these people up here can make a decision on what to put in the charter. Because I think Chad had brought it up, there's ordinances that take stuff out of the charter that's still in the charter. So I think it has to be looked at. There's some response things in there. We don't follow those responses in the charter. We don't follow the leadership part of it because it's not clarified, and there's laws.
So thank you for that. That's very, very illuminating to know that there are conflicting things. So now my question goes to County Attorney Enruth. Not that you have all kinds of spare time on your hands, but is there something that someone or someone that could come to a future meeting, and kind of give us a sense of what those, we have the charter right now, and then maybe illuminate us on how many ordinances are that contradict the charter? I don't know where we could go on that, but.
Commissioner Dolan, commission itself, I don't know if it's necessarily contradictory because the charter could provide for it. For instance, if we're talking about fire services, the charter specifically provides for certain things unless otherwise directed by ordinance. That's the availability of the commissioners to continue expanding upon the charter. So it's not necessarily that it's getting rid of something in the charter, it's most likely expanding on it. And to do so would be a monumental task, which I have no idea if we have the time for right now.
Ms. Dolan, it seems to me it's kind of similar to what we learned from Julia Crane, where a department or a body, so in this case maybe Fire Advisory Council and the other council of the council, I'm sorry, I'm getting them all mixed up together, but folks could come together to look at ordinances and, give recommendations to council because, that's their work, right? And they're the ones that would be enforcing or employing said ordinances, and then council could review. That might be a recommendation this body would make. But I think, again, we'd have to figure out or get advice from the group of which advisory board would be doing that work of reviewing. Mr. Silk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Perdue-Dolan, I think you brought up a great point, and we've talked about it before about how the charter needs to be somewhat vague and ordinances can be specific. I would just like to see proponents come out to have the entire fire service, volunteers and career, be run by the executive board of our community. That's how every other department is run that we are, when we're interviewing most of the departments. The commissioners who get voted by the people should be the representative to say how the fire department, the public works department, the sheriff's department should all work. And that's what I would be in favor of. And would you be in favor of that, Mr. Fisher, that the executive branch of our community runs the entire fire department, career and volunteer?
Well, I think, Chad, to answer the question, I think I'd have to look and see what you mean by the executive branch.
Whether legislative.
Geez, thank you. Everyone's probably wondering what I was talking about. The legislative branch of our government, the council commissioners. Thank you for the clarification.
Well, I think they're supposed to do that now. So I don't think it's getting done now because of the fact that, in my opinion, I have a brother that's on the council of commissioners. Council of commissioners don't have much power. The executive branch has power, but the legislative branch don't have much. So to answer your question, I'd have to say no until I knew what you meant by the legislative branch.
Okay. Just to follow up, and then I'll be done. I did refer to, the Council of Commissioners, who, in my opinion, I mean, it even says in the law that they're the legislative branch of our community, correct? They should run all of our departments through ordinance, because then the people can talk to them. That's how governance should work. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then it's not the director of fire services who's been challenged with this problem to fix. It goes back to our legislative branch who needs to fix it. That's where it needs to go, because challenging the chief executive or the director of fire services or fire advisory, that's an impossible task. The legislative branch, in my opinion, needs to form the structure of how our departments are run through what they're given in the charter, what we can provide them, and what the public votes on it. Thank you.
I follow up on that just one, and you're probably right, Chad, in a sense there, but we have to know how much power and authority they have, and if we had the legislative branch run the full fire department, public works department, all of it, then we wouldn't need a director of fire service. Would that be correct?
Well, we need a public works director. We need a sheriff. We need all these other department heads that run their department. So very similar to that, how public works director Neary has all his sub-departments under him. They have to follow ordinance. Director Neary and the chief executive have to make sure they follow ordinance because they're the leaders within that department. But the ordinances are set by the legislative branch, council of commissioners.
Yeah, I would have to give it some thought, Chad. Thank you.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, I think the fire department and a number of other departments are administrative departments. And as much as I agree with Chad, I think depending on what we hear from the public, I think chief executives has that authority to hire director of fire service, public works department, director, the other administrative branches. Legislative branch provides policy and provides ordinance and provides law. So those separation of powers between the chief executive and the legislative branch executive branch and the legislative branch is really important. And that's, you know, I'm thinking in the future when we get down to our recommendations, the same thing. So, yeah, I think it's important that the legislative branch provides us the opportunity of providing sound policy, sound law, and the executive branch has to implement that policy and has to implement that law. So, yeah, there's some good discussion there.
Way over my pay grade.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more comment, and thank you, Dan, for making that clarification, because what's hard in any kind of local government is the fact that you have administrative departments, but you also have elected people that run departments. And when you have elected officials that may or may not be conscientious of ordinances and what all, they determine the priorities of that department. And one priority for one elected official 4 years later or however long later, a new person comes in at an elected position, all those priorities change, and we've heard that discussion quite a bit in our interviews with other departments and department heads, so thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Mr. Fisher?
No, I think I've spoke enough for tonight. I'm losing my voice. I just want to thank all you people on the committee. Thank you for volunteering your time.
Yeah.
I know what it's like. You got a big job ahead of you. Thank you.
Ted, Yuri?
Commissioners, I'm being asked for a quick recess, so if we can take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll pick up with the volunteer fire department's lawyer to look over the red line changes. So 5 minutes, we'll reconvene at 7:30, please.
Scan this as a PDF, and then I might just take this and a physical copy and put it in my physical record. Is that okay with you then? Excellent. That solves my problem. And my name is Kim, by the way. I think you're my fire department. I live over at your school. And I'm like, I see that all the time. And I realize, oh, because I can help work at the library at 7 o'clock on Thursdays. No wonder I see you guys out all the time. And of course I go down here. Turn right on. Very good. So, like, you're out there all the time. At least on Thursdays when I'm driving by at 7:10. And my daughter is also the president of the history club. So Fisk and Hoffman and everything, setting up the meter drill display and everything. So.
Matter of fact, I see Chris when I was walking in.
Oh yeah. Of course you did. Of course. I wasn't sure he was driving the trolley because I hadn't seen it. I always look so I can give him a hard time.
Yeah, it's just covered by the courthouse and you walk it up.
Who doesn't want to?
Yeah, you invite everybody in the trolley.
So, very well, good. Well, thank you for this. So good. I'll have a hard copy to put in the hard minutes and scan it and attach. Oh, honey, no, they're always long.
I'd like to reconvene the meeting, please, if we could.
Madam Chair, could I change that from Ted Berry to Kate? Thank you.
I do have a handout. Could I possibly pass that around?
Absolutely, please do. All right, commissioners are ready to reconvene. We have Kate Dimwitty, who's going to come forward with her representation for the departments in regard to the red lines that they've offered us. And fire chiefs, we appreciate you helping us stay on time, so we appreciate, and we do have all your comments. If there's anything that you'd like to add, we can go back for sure.
I'm losing my mind. Oh, yeah. I am sorry. It's hot, it's late. My name is Kate Dinwiddie, and I operate my own law practice with the law office of Catherine Locke Dinwiddie. I've been practicing attorney for 25 years, and what I can say is that I really became interested in fire districts, fire service areas, municipal fire departments, emergency responders, ambulance services early on in my career when I worked as a deputy county attorney for I worked in Gallatin County as a deputy county attorney because part of our statutory responsibilities were to represent the fire districts. And what I saw when I worked in there is that a lot of times, they're busy with a lot of other departments, and so that became kind of an area when I got into private practice that I wanted to focus on. So that's all I practice. I teach at the Montana Fire Trustees Association. I've done so for many years. I also teach at the Montana State Fire Chiefs Association and the Montana State Volunteer Firefighters Association. So I'm also the counsel for the Montana Fire Trustees Association itself, the association. So I have clients ranging from paid fire departments with unions, fire departments without unions, volunteers, and combination departments. So I feel like I have a good handle on what's going on with fire departments and fire districts around the state. And so I'm here to share the information that I have to help you kind of put the pieces together. So what you have in front of you is just kind of an analysis, legal framework, and charter interpretation. And I can honestly say that Butte-Silver is the only county in Montana that treats its fire districts this way. No other county operates with this structure. Even if you go that has a paid direct, that really doesn't recognize that fire districts are separate political subdivisions. They have elected trustees, and I know we got into this discussion about elected or appointed by acclamation. It doesn't matter. The fact is that they are public officials. They have to answer to their own public. They can be subject to recall, even do a recall election, just as our county commissioners can. There was actually a recent one for a fire district trustee up in Lewis and Clark County. So it does happen. And that these are trustees. They're held to fiduciary duties. They're not just boards of directors. They're actually trustees, just as you would be a trustee of an executor type situation. They do have those fiduciary duties. So I think it's important to note that what you're dealing with here is very unique. It's also very paternalistic. The fire districts are set up as separate political governing bodies with a fire chief that basically is the highest ranking officer. And I did give you the statutes to that, which is on the last page, where you can see 733-2001, where it says fire chief powers and duties. That's a copyright of the statute. And then also if you go to 733-2105, that's the powers and duties of trustees. So you can see those are statutory requirements. When I do trainings, I go through the open meeting laws. I tell them that you have to post your agenda and your notice 48 hours in advance. We walk through the legal requirements of what a fire district and fire service area must do. these districts are not just volunteer fire departments, they're separate political subdivisions. The charter did not get rid of their legal structure. So that's one thing that you have to understand is the problem that I see that that all of these issues came from is the charter. The charter is conflicting, and you can't really, and it's already been determined and decided that the charter did not get rid of the fire districts nor their budget authority. So if you have these legally existing political subdivisions, what do you do when you throw in all of the charter language on top of it? Which laws are they supposed to follow? Are they supposed to follow the charter and the director of fire service? Are they supposed to follow the statutes that directly relate to fire districts and fire chiefs? So, what are some other ideas that you can have? It works all around the state where you have these fire councils that are actually very successful. I'll use Gallatin County as an example, where you have Bozeman City, which is a paid fire department with union firefighters. Their chief, Josh Waldo, sits on the fire council with all of the other fire districts, fire chiefs. They talk about training, they talk about issues, they develop countywide protocols, and it works. There is no situation where Josh Waldo, because he runs the municipal fire department, is over all of the other fire chiefs. They're all equal. And that's what I think that the problem here is with the charter, is that statute says we're equal, charter says, maybe not. And the administrative decisions that came after the charter really did impact kind of how this relationship was going to be set up. So, lots of legal stuff we could get into, and I don't want to do that to you tonight, but I just want to say, Section 7-03 of the charter does say the fire department shall consist of a paid fire department and volunteer fire departments in Butte-Silver, and shall operate under existing statutes. Okay? Then it says that 7-03, or it's not dash, it's 0.03b, says that there shall be organized and operated in accordance with the laws of the state of Montana relating to municipal fire departments, and that's for your paid fire department. This clause applies specifically to the paid fire department, incorporating the framework of Title VII, Chapter 33, Part 41. Now that is the municipal fire code, 733, Part 41. So that's what the cities and towns have to follow. So this charter is directing you to look at that set of statutes for their paid fire department. Perfectly reasonable. Then you go on to 703 sub D. The organization of existing fire departments shall be governed by applicable sections of the law. So this delegates governance of rural fire districts and Part 23 fire companies back to their respective state statutes, which would be 733 Part 21 for fire districts, 733 Part 23 for fire companies. Unless it's changed by a formal ordinance, and I could not find any ordinance that was adopted that would change that legal structure. So what I'm basically saying is the issues, I believe, can be resolved in two ways. Either you dissolve the fire districts completely, which you do have the statutory authority to do in your charter, or you treat them as separate political subdivisions operating under their board of trustees with their fire chief. It doesn't have to be kind of a conglomeration of various statutes to create this hybrid version of what you have going on in Butte-Silver, because I don't think I know it's not working. And I've had Butte-Silver volunteer fire department show up at my training and they're listening to all my spiels and the statutes and what works, and they go, we got this situation in Butte-Silver, and I've never realized how different it was until I reached out to me over a year ago and said, hey, we're having some problems. And I thought, oh, great, this is going to be easy to solve. I know what fire district law is, and I can come in and help. And, I reached out and I sent that, I'm sure that you guys have seen it, a letter out to Zach Osborne and saying, hey, we want to move forward. as fire districts and find solutions. So that didn't get anywhere, but that didn't stop us because I still believe that changes can be made that are charter-based, that can serve the residents of the fire districts and the communities at large. So let's talk about funding. Fire districts are funded through the assessment of mill levies, right? So you had a problem because Butte-Silver took away the budget authority for the fire districts. Whether that was lawful or not is questionable, but they didn't have their budgets. So why didn't they do anything sooner? Well, they probably couldn't afford their own attorney at that point because they didn't have any budgets, and so they had to survive in the system that's not working. So I think that what we need to do now is just to focus on what's going to fix this, what's going to be a solution, what's going to get the paid fire chief and the volunteer fire chiefs working together within the structure of the charter. And that's what you guys are here for, right? To look at the charter. How can we make it better? You're right, we can't fix the problems, the emotional issues, but I can say that I agree with Chad in saying that, you know, are these fire districts going to be able to function, going to be able with their own mill levy? Well, it's not the paid department's responsibility to determine another political subdivision's taxing ability and whether or not they have the ability to fund it. Because I agree, the paid departments need the volunteers and the volunteers need the paid. We can't compare apples to apples when you're talking about a career department and a volunteer fire department, right? One's doing it for money, it's their livelihood, they have time during the day to train, that's what they do. You know, unions are operating under collective bargaining agreements. I mean, that is their job, that's what they love to do, that's what they're doing. Volunteers, you're making time, right, at night to conduct training, to go to trainings. When are these meetings that are being held? Are they being held during the day when volunteers can show up? Probably not. Because we're looking like at 6, 7 o'clock at night when you're mostly having your volunteer fire districts do their training. So it'd be great if I could have all of the fire districts in the state of Montana operating at a career level. That would be perfect. It's just not realistic. And we've got more fire districts in the state of Montana, volunteers providing fire protection than any other structure, any other entity type. So there must be something, right, going on with the Board of Trustees, the fire chief, and the volunteer firefighters. Of course there's funding issues all over the state. The legislature just did some crazy stuff with the mill levies, but do we try? Do those volunteer fire districts go out to their voters and do they run a mill levy? Yeah, they do. Do some of them pass? Yeah, some pass, some don't, and sometimes they end up running it for 3 years. But I think we need to focus back on the language and what you want to do. The language of the charter. I just can't advise fire districts to operate according to fire district law when your charter conflicts with that. It becomes impossible for me. Or for any, I'm sure many people then on the volunteer side have stated there's ambiguity and it's not working. So I would say let's try and find a way to fix it at the charter level. Fire companies are usually operated, if you go into my summary table on page 2. So fire departments, paid fire departments, they operate under 733-4101. Rural fire districts are 733-2101. And you also get into fire service areas. For example, Lewis and Clark County has probably 6 separate fire service areas. Now those fire service areas collect fees per unit. So say if you have a residence, it's a set fee. So Lewis and Clark has fire service areas and then also 8 or so fire districts. But they're all operating, you don't have the city chief of Helena telling those fire districts how to operate. They work together well, they have mutual aid agreements, interlocal agreements, that's how they function. So I don't think we need to make the problem harder. We just need to be smarter. We also need to talk about consolidation. Consolidation of fire districts is something different than city-county consolidation. Consolidation of 2 fire districts or 2 fire service areas is under 733-2120. But when we're talking about, when we were asking questions about consolidation, I wasn't sure if we were talking about consolidating fire districts under that statutory scheme, or if we were talking about Butte-Silver consolidation. So I just was a little concerned about making sure we all knew what statutory scheme we were operating under. Let's talk about liability. Fire districts can be sued and can sue separately from the county. So they are the ones that can provide their liability insurance. Unfortunately, they get sued in the state of Montana. So if the Butte-Silver doesn't want the liability for safety concerns, then kick them off. Make them be separate, independent political subdivisions like they are around the state of Montana, and then they can get their own insurance coverage, and we don't have to worry about this from a claims perspective. Now, safety, yes, safety is always a priority. The Fire Services Training School offers a class called Firefighter 1, and that is in Firefighter 2, and that class is taught the same way around the state. So, some fire departments don't, or fire districts don't use FSTS training, but if you're gonna get a Firefighter 1 from the Montana Fire Services Training School, you're gonna get the same education. So, that's what our districts use the Fire Service Training School. So, what else? I know there were other questions.
Ms. Casey?
Thank you for the information, Kate. Do the fire districts choose which training company or that they use?
The fire chiefs do, usually, yes, and most of them, I would say, from my experience, usually use the Fire Services Training School. There's also other academies that you can go to out of state and in state, but a majority of the ones that I work with use the Fire Services Training School. Yes, and they do have, and these fire councils in these different counties, they do have trainings together. You know, I mean, they're not gonna always, it's not a uniform, but it doesn't have to be. Unified Command is bringing in a lot of different jurisdictions and making it work without losing their independence, legal independence. So sure, you're gonna have your career firefighters that are gonna be really good at what they do, of course, but you're also gonna have those volunteers that can bring in the same, you know, or similar level of skills.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, Kate, could you go over the self-governing powers provision of the local government, especially consolidated government, and does that...
That would be your county attorney. That would be the expert on consolidated governments.
Okay.
But I'm talking about, when I was referring to consolidated, I was talking about when 2 or more fire districts consolidate.
Okay, then, County Attorney Inruth. The self-governing powers of consolidated government are consolidated government. Does that take precedent over statute if it's not in conflict?
Commissioner Denny, would you please repeat the question?
Self-governing powers of consolidated government. We have a form of government that is self-governing powers that is, which was provided by the Constitution, Montana Constitution, that any, in my mind, that any statute created by the legislature that is silent, the self-governing powers have authority. My idea is in the charter, since we're self-governing powers, does any of the information that Kate gave us, is that appropriate still, or self-governing powers more a priority?
So you're asking a supremacy clause question. So yes. The state constitution and Montana statute provides for specific, laws that are going to govern the state of Montana, and then the counties have to abide by. If state law is silent on it, then yes, the counties can rule and regulate on it. However, when we're talking about these types of issues, we have a mix. We have state laws that are saying if a county city consolidated, the rural fire districts are not affected unless otherwise, done so by the county. So Kate is correct that the county has the authority to change those laws. They just have to do so in their charter, which I believe is what she said.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
So I hope that what I told you was actually applicable to our discussion, or it's been a really long day. So,
Kate, I had a question regarding, on your first page, you said these provisions confirm that the charter preserves the legal independence of non-municipal fire districts and does not authorize consolidated control over rural fire governance. And so my question might be stickier than I imagine, but within our city, we have rural fire departments within the municipality, which is an outgrowth piece. You know, when we consolidated in 1977, we were probably more rural than we are now. So how do we deal with this particular sentence?
So I think what you're dealing with is each fire district, when it was created prior to consolidation. So the will of the people at the time, before you consolidated in a city county government, was through a petition process, right, to create these fire districts. And they don't have to be rural. That is their legal name, is rural fire district, but they're fire districts in urban areas. Obviously, we have Missoula Rural Fire District that is right next door and probably within certain areas of Missoula City proper, okay? So even though it's in an urban area, those fire districts still have their own geographical boundaries that were determined when they were created through a petition process. So petition is presented to the county commissioners at the time, and it usually had geographical boundaries of where that district was going to be created. And then over the years, there's a way for people to annex into existing fire districts, and so those boundaries grow by those annexations. So I have a fire district in the city of Bozeman, where Bozeman is all around it, and there's just this little pocket of fire district because those people didn't want to annex and the city didn't want to force annexation onto them. So it's really kind of a mixture. So it doesn't matter if it's urban or rural for that sense.
Thank you. I think Ms. Dolan, and then I'll take you, Mr. Silk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kate, for being here tonight. So I wanted, I don't even know, I'm trying to figure out this question, so bear with me. When on the first page, 1.2, charter recognition of distinct legal entities, down to 7.03D, it talks about, you know, the delegates government, the delegation or governance of rural fire districts and Part 23 fire companies back to their respective state statutes.
Right.
Unless changed by formal ordinance. And I think because that's in the current charter, what is your opinion about that unless changed by formal ordinance? And I'm surprised you didn't find one with Mr. Fisher's testimony tonight that said maybe Dan Foley had changed something through ordinance. But, you know, it goes back to the former question that we've had about how much specificity do we want to put in the charter language for the fire department. Can you talk about that and what your sense is of that part of it?
I've always been taught, and your county attorney can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not an expert in city-county consolidations, but I always thought you have state law and your charter has to comply with state law, and then you have ordinance that have to comply with your charter, et cetera, down the line. So I would say if you have a state statute and there is a specific state statute, like Matt would say, then your ordinance can be necessarily be in conflict with that specific state statute, especially if it was preserved in your charter. So I would say that any ordinance that was against state statute and therefore against your charter would not be something that would be enforceable. I probably am not answering your question properly.
Commissioner Dolan, she is. You can see that in the Attorney General's opinion with the budgetary authority of the trustees. The charter specifically did not provide for enough when we consolidated, the charter did not provide enough in-depth information, and then it went to the ordinance stating that the Director of Fire Services had budgetary authority, administrative authority in the works. And then the Attorney General's opinion came back, which specifically states that section 2.16.220 is basically in direct conflict with state statute and therefore is inapplicable. So it happens. Counties enact ordinances that are in direct contrast with state statute, and then we have legal battles over them.
Thank you for that, Matt. I appreciate that. So what can we do as a study commission updating the charter, is it a case of putting some guardrails up on the ordinances and what they look like to kind of prevent that? Or is that just a moot point that we just have to deal with down the road? Because I would love to have a charter update that 10 years from now or 20 years from now, folks sitting in this room won't be going, gosh, I wish they had fixed that 20 years ago or 10 years ago. We're still having the same problem. But is that even possible to put the, I guess maybe prioritary guideposts or something within the charter, or is that something that's just wishful thinking?
Commissioner Dolan, Council, no, the previous study commission, I mean, if they'd looked at the state statute, I think could have clearly put in the charter what they were trying to do. And then that's what you have to look at individually with each of the things that you're doing. Is there an overriding state law that is going to require more specificity in your charter, or is it more open, allowing you to have a charter which says we can pass additional laws by ordinance? So that would be a case-by-case independent examination of what you're looking to change in the charter and how that relates to state statutes, so we can make sure that they all fit the way they're supposed to.
Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kate. I'm trying to absorb everything that you said. I think it needs to be brought back up, as the director mentioned last week, that when in 1979 House Bill 392 came through and specifically put in MCA that unless specifically provided by in charter, and that is what the the Attorney General is referring to.
Absolutely.
Right. So that wasn't decided by the people, that was decided by the legislature.
That particular section, you are correct. When I was talking
and I
about
guess
the
I'm not
people, I was just referring back to the people.
And I guess I'm not asking a question, I'm just going back through of what happened. That is what the other House Bill 547 wanted, to give it back to the legislative body. County Attorney Enruth, in your opinion, would we be able to put something into the charter that says in some way or another that the legislative branch of Butte-Silver County, Butte-Silver-Bow, will be able to run its fire department similar to a lot of other charters that don't even have a fire department in it because it's run by ordinance?
Commissioner Silk, as Catherine stated as well, the answer to that's yes. The state law has given you the authority to govern within our own charter how our fire services is directed. However, the charter is what has to be specific, not the ordinances.
Great.
In this particular instance.
Okay. And
specifically regarding volunteer fire districts.
Yeah. Thank you, County Attorney. And I basically just made you say the same thing that Ms. Perdue-Dolan asked. With that being said, Kate is right that we are either going to change the charter and Butte-Silver-Bow is going to be in charge of all fire departments, or the fire departments, rural fire departments, are going to be by themselves and not a department if the community wants that. So would I be incorrect in saying that if they're a rural fire district, that they would have to be totally funded and operate under their district trustees, as you stated before? And although I don't have the authority to figure that out, which I know I don't, but I do have the authority to ask the question because I was elected to this board, my fear as a career firefighter is that I'm not going to have tenders on scene. So it is directly affected the career department. So in the Butte-Silver-Bow charter, it states that the volunteers are a department within Butte-Silver-Bow.
I don't think it says that.
It says there will be a volunteer and career department under Butte-Silver-Bow, but then there's conflicting language within the charter itself.
Depends
Right.
on how you're defining department, though. So, and we need to interrupt you,
There
but
shall be a fire department which shall be composed of the paid fire department and the volunteer fire departments in the city county.
right, and that's the distinction why words matter. And does that volunteer fire department mean rural fire district, or does it mean some separate entity, a subdivision of the Butte-Silver-Bow
Sure,
County?
yeah.
And that's not answered, and so I think that's a good point, is that it is ambiguous.
It is a very good point, because that has been, Section A states it right there, and we don't know what the intent was in 1977 when we consolidated. But I do know what the intent was in 1977 when we consolidated, that said in Section D is except as otherwise provided by charter or until changed by ordinance. That's what the community voted on. and then it got switched at the state level with House Bill 392. So if the community really wanted a charter and they wanted it to read this way, except as otherwise provided by this charter until changed by ordinance, that is exactly how governance should work. The charter should allow the ordinance to take law, but in this case, we don't have that. So I guess what I would just recommend to this body is to give it back to Butte-Silver Bow and not rural fire departments and career fire departments. Make it a Butte-Silver Bow fire department, and then you will not have these problems because they're going to be governed by the legislative branch.
Can I add a possible problem that might entail? Because your charter does mention, references Part 41, and the Director of Fire Services did bring up this AG opinion that says that paid fire departments cannot be supplemented by volunteers. Now, that may not apply because it could be an administrative decision by MMIA, but I think that's something that Zach did bring up. So if you're going to go to a paid structure being supplemented with your own volunteers, we would just need clarification on that to make sure that AG opinion did not apply.
Sure, and we can make it very clear in the charter if the community wants it, that they want their fire department run by ordinance. We can make that very clear. That could be a recommendation to the public, that the public puts trust within the legislative branch to run their fire departments if we have charter supremacy. Is that correct?
Well, I'm just going to say the public puts their trust in their Board of Trustees too, so I'm not going to argue with you, but I think we have varying levels of public trust, and Board of Trustees are definitely public entities and deserve that public trust as well.
No, and I agree with that, but you stated earlier too that that it does matter the context of voted on by the people compared to acclamation. Although it is correct, the context of saying that we were voted on by the people needs to be clear, that these district trustees have full authority. And if that's the case, let them have full authority so we can get past this problem.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Let
Yeah.
the Director of Fire Services govern the fire department, the career department. Let the volunteers govern themselves. That would be a recommendation that I have to my fellow constituents on this board, is to, it's either separation of power or it's complete authority by Butte-Silver Bow, if the public wants it.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd ask this commission if, knowing all of this and the emotion around it and everything, but I think it would be advantageous for us to ask Anaconda Deer Lodge County's fire department or chief executive and the fire chief or fire department heads to come to the commission and explain how well their fire department works being autonomous from their charter. I'd like that information myself personally. I'd like to have someone from Anaconda Deer Lodge County say, you know, how is this working for you guys? You're in another consolidated government. I don't know how the volunteers would feel about it. I'm going to ask your opinion on that. But I'd really like the sense of taking it entirely out of the charter and making it autonomous. It might solve a lot of problems or it might create new ones. So I'd like your opinion on that.
I always think it's a good idea to see different models from around the state. Fergus County is not consolidated, so it would just be Anaconda, Deer Lodge, and Butte-Silver Bow to look at.
So, Madam Chair, would that be possible? Kim, would that be possible to invite them to come at some point?
Absolutely.
I just had one more thing
Go
that
ahead.
I just wanted to add, is that there's also a kind of this unequal treatment between your fire districts and in Butte-Silver Bow too, because you have Melrose, and then you have part sections of Wise River. And Melrose is a rural fire district located in Butte-Silver Bow County, and they are governed by a board of trustees as well as a fire chief. So just going to ask, if you're going to have fire districts, you treat them all the same, whether they're located outside, or make the definition more clear, because it doesn't make sense to me that they're operating as a separate fire district with the same powers of state statute, located in the same county that has a charter that says the same things that we're looking at here tonight. So that's confusing to me.
I would totally agree with that, considering they're 20 to 30 minutes away from the city area of our community. So that might be the difference.
Yep. Just say define it in the charter,
Yep.
because it doesn't list Boulevard versus Melrose. It just says volunteer fire department. So if you're going to list them out, then you can do it that way, by name, just to provide clarity.
So may I ask, the red lines that you guys provided,
Now, I would just want to correct
Go
that.
ahead.
I have not seen that. I've heard discussions about it. Just had a brief chance coming in from out of state, so I kind of threw this stuff together. There's some spelling errors in here that I'm sorry about, so I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I understand what is kind of what I was saying, right? The changes to the charter, clarifying it, and it has it here, so. I think the overall intent was just to bring it back to the state statutes without having the opportunity to fully read it word for word this afternoon. But I think that was, go ahead. You had a question, and I will attempt to answer it, but I did not draft it, so go ahead.
no, I assumed, I made an assumption, so please excuse me for that assumption. I thought you guys had worked on this together. So my question was just in those red lines, we had the addition of the MCA in Part D, but then we basically are eliminating F, G, H. I just wanted to hear opinion about those eliminations.
You know what I think the intent was just to try and maintain the statutory authority that fire districts have already, and let's not complicate it by throwing in other provisions that may not be meant necessary. I think that was the intent. So going through there and seeing, is that necessary? Why don't we have the paid fire chief be a co-equal member of the fire counselor with the other fire chiefs, like it is across the state? And I do have to say that I do respect Zach's position because I represent a lot of paid fire chiefs, and having dual roles has got to be absolutely impossible to do just because the paid fire chief has enough on his plate without having to worry about being a director of fire service. So.
Do you know about, we have kind of danced around the conversation here of what happens if a fire service district cannot raise funds? What happens according to our law?
Well, there's legal ways to dissolve fire districts. The city there's also annexation processes available. There's fire service areas that can be created that are different funding mechanism. Like I said, they're on fees, so people know what they're paying for versus property tax, property valuations. So there are other ways to look at that. I've had a lot of fire districts struggle, volunteer fire districts struggle in the state of Montana. I have not had any of them dissolve yet. And we're talking really low budgets, like $30,000, and they're still finding a way to operate through mutual aid and automatic aid agreements. So it is a struggle. I will tell you, it is a struggle.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want some additional clarification with regard to fire halls. That we have 9 fire halls. I'll just say fire halls, like the different boulevard and all that. And then we have the fire district. So in a fire district, how many of the local fire halls are within that district? Are they all in different ones, and we have a whole bunch of them? So if and the reason I'm asking that is because if there were come to a time where we needed to create a bigger fire district, consolidate those districts, would that then, is it like a domino effect to say if you're having a bigger district and let's just say, for just argument's sake, it includes 2 fire halls, what happens next? Do they have to combine, or is there any law on that or situation, or is that up to the county to decide,
For fire stations?
For fire stations versus fire districts? And I'm sorry if that's very confusing.
So fire districts usually have fire stations located sometimes in their fire districts, honestly, sometimes not. So the deeds to those that property you would need to look at. So if the deed is to racetrack rural fire district and that it would need to be transferred, legally deeded to Butte-Silver, there's a process to do that for sure. And same with the vehicle apparatus. And the apparatus is another issue, but if the fire districts have purchased that through, say, a FEMA grant, and they have come up with the matching funds through their own donations and reaching out to the public, then those are, obviously they would be legally owned by that fire district, and so those titles could be transferred to whatever fire, if it was Butte-Silver or whatever. So there would be a process to combine if necessary, and that's the same what happens with two districts that consolidate, is you kind of come up with all your property and you figure out, okay, now which entity is it going to go to? So, if that answered your question. Well, and I also too wanted to mention the fire authority bill that we have been trying to push through the legislature as well, which would allow not just fire districts or fire service areas, but also municipalities to join into a larger fire protection authority. So that's really a popular bill that a lot of fire districts and fire service areas and even municipalities are interested in across the state. Don't have any statutes yet, but that would be something else that hopefully is coming down the pike.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Kate, what a bunch of interesting information. You gave us a lot of homework, and I don't know about anybody else, but I would like to have some time to digest what you gave us, of
Absolutely.
course. And this is awesome, and I really would like to be able to do some cross-referencing between the two, but for the sake of time,
Yes.
you guys are great, just coming here and devoting your time and your efforts to helping us. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and if you did have any follow-up questions,
That would be
like
great.
I said, I can step out
I
of the
bet
role of being their representative and also be, kind of
So I
tell
bet
you my experience.
I bet you can run, but you probably can't hide,
I
right?
know.
Okay.
No, but
Anyway,
thank you.
Thank
I
you so
appreciate.
much for being here.
I appreciate your time.
All right, any follow-up questions, commissioners? All right, Fire Chiefs, did you have anything you wanted to add? All right, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate the time and the attention and the passion. And certainly, we will do a lot of due diligence to review the information that's been provided, and as well as, I think our next question might be to our county treasurer in terms of understanding taxation and levies and implications of separating the two completely. Would be another question we need to answer well and have information for the public. So we'll be on it. So stay in touch, please. We appreciate you all. Moving on to our next bit of correspondence and our study commission update, Ms. Cohn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's no new communication or correspondence this time. I was going to report that my laptop has been ordered, but I have a new laptop. So I'll keep the old one for another day or so and make sure that everything from the old one is on here, erase the old one. Is there anybody on this commission that would like to have it before I turn it? I mean, should I pass it on to somebody here? Speak now. Well, yeah, it'll go to IT, but then I can say, hey, can so-and-so has requested this? Because they've been offered, they are study commission computers.
I believe you can run that by IT. Yeah.
Yeah. But before I did that, I wanted to see if anybody wanted one or if I can just give it to them back free and clear.
I think everybody was good. Yeah? Okay. I think we're good to go, Kim. Thank you.
And then I had some discussions with Kathy in IT about hearing devices, ordering some hearing devices, and also looking at some transcription software. So I think that is it.
Any questions? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had asked Kim before the meeting, and she asked me to ask it for all of you, and I was talking to Ben, said he'd like one. I'd actually like a hard copy of the fire study, but I clicked on the email this afternoon, and it's like 8 million pages, and I'm like, I'm not printing this out. So I wanted to know if it would be feasible to print out a few copies of that fire study so we could read it and have a hard copy of it, but I know it's a lot of copying, so I wanted to ask it to the group.
Is that something that, Ms. Casey, you can probably help answer? Can we send it to a printer instead of using a photocopier? Okay. So maybe we could send it to Insti or whomever to make, because it's like 85 pages, isn't it? Yeah. So maybe if you would like a hard copy, Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, can we ask the authors of it to send a couple more, since we paid for it already, can we? It's on! Can we ask the people who did the study for a couple extra copies versus spending time and money on doing it? Oh, sorry.
I think I can answer that, Kim. They provided a certain amount of copies and then a flash drive of that. That was in the contract, yes, thank you. So we would have to print off the entire thing. And it might even be worth printing off. There's a section that kind of gives you like the Reader's Digest version. And then if it warrants, a larger copy, then we could do that as well. So depending on what you want to navigate through, so.
Yeah, thank you, Chad, for that. I'd love to maybe just do the Reader's Digest version hard copy, because then if we needed some clarification or context, we could go to the email or to the PDF that we have on our computers to get some more context. But I think if you have a Reader's Digest version, that's awesome. That'd be great.
And what I'll do, just to stay totally clear of it, I will ask the Director of Fire Services to send you that Reader's Digest and let you know where it's at. I'm trying to stay clear of, or Kim can do it. I just want to be kind of out of it, although you guys are probably just waiting until I get done talking tonight, so I get it.
I haven't had a chance to look at it, but isn't that what they sent? I mean, I assume there's an abstract, like when you do a professional paper. The abstract, we probably already have it, right? Isn't that what they emailed to us? The whole thing? And that there's probably an abstract at the
The Director
front?
of Fire Services emailed the whole thing,
Right.
and within that, we
Is
should be
there
able
an
to find.
abstract
I'm
at
sure there is, yeah.
At the beginning? And so you just want me to print off the abstract that, okay. And that's
Mr.
fine.
Dennehy?
Madam Chair, I think we can print off the abstract or
Yeah.
the Reader's Digest, have it copied, and from there, we can move to the PDF.
Right.
All right, thank you. Unfinished business, our public outreach discussion, op-ed pieces. I know Mr. Steppen has been working on that, so we'll just leave that one behind unless there were questions or needs. Okay. We know what he's doing, we're working. And so Ms. Adams is here tonight, so she had a couple of things to talk with us about, and then we are moving that contract forward. Ms. Casey, or Mr. Enruth, we had a question for you. I think that Ms. Casey had sent via email, so I'll defer to her.
This is on the $30,000 for the contract? Yep, I'll get you an answer. I think it got stuck in Barracuda and I didn't see it. So I've got that as a note. My gut tells me that even though you guys have the authority to contract, we still have to run it through the commission to get their approval to have JP sign it. So all department heads can enter into contracts. I can too, but it still has to go through commission and then he signs off on it. But I'll get you a final answer on that because I don't know if this board, being an elected board itself, also has that authority. So I will find that out.
I'm just conscious that we're holding her up, so if we can get it as fast as possible, I appreciate that, because I
That will be
do
quick.
have it on possible agenda for the council to approve if we need to, so we can, once we have an answer, we'll just move whichever direction. So Ms. Adams, if you'd like to come up, please.
Thank you for having me. I just have a couple of really easy housekeeping type questions, so hopefully these are softballs. So there are 3 members of the commission that are set to speak at the Sunrise Kiwanis on Wednesday morning. And then also I believe there are 2 members of the commission that will be on Party Line on Wednesday, is that correct? 3?
There's 3, we're winding up with 3 on Party Line.
Great. So just want to make sure that everyone's okay with a kind of Facebook post to get that information out into the public. Okay. Second thing is the website says that the party line is the third Thursday. Just wanted to get that corrected on the county website, that it's the third Wednesday. And I don't know if that's a job for Ms. Cohen. Okay, wonderful. I think that's correct in reading the meeting minutes, that there was some confusion. So just want to make sure that that's corrected on the website. And then the third thing would be that the Butte-Silver County podcast is interested in having some members of the commission come on the podcast. So they could do that next week, Monday, Thursday, or Friday. Is that something that the commission wants to do, or do we want to push that out another week or so?
We're tired. I think we're all saying push it off at this point. I will not be here next week because I have professional development that I'm providing in Red Lodge starting on Wednesday. So I'll be here on Monday night, but depending on the podcast, I won't be here. So,
Madam Chair, I won't be here Monday.
Okay.
I'll be out of state.
Thank you.
And they're open on time, so it's kind of up to the commission. I think I'm getting the sense that maybe we want to push that out another week. Is that?
And then we can wrangle a volunteer. Ms. Dolan.
Thank you. Yeah, looking at the calendar, next week, I'd be able to help out, but the following week, we're getting into the July 4th weekend and the July 4th week, so that might be even, and I'd hate to push it out more than that, because the more info we can get out to the public, the better, on any possible podcast or platform, the sooner the better, because I think that, folks know that we're meeting, and then they know that we're, maybe some know that we're doing the department heads first and all that, and they can look at the timeline, but the faster we can get out to the public, more often the better.
Mr. Silk.
Madam Chair, I would be willing to do, what were the dates again?
Just Monday, Thursday, or Friday, and then the times, just kind of coordinating with Lindsay Alt, but she sounded like was pretty open.
Okay. I guess my fear is I just am so green to this that I need help, Dan. I need help, Raylyn. That's why I'm glad that I'm going with you two to the party line, because I just need help with going about this. So I would be willing to do it if Cindy, if you're willing to do it, just to get it out there.
Yeah, I'm available Thursday or Friday next week. I'm just looking, I have got 2 phones, 2 schedules. So yeah, whatever works for you, Chad. I'd be more than willing to try and get it done next week.
I would only be able to do it Thursday,
Okay.
and I'm gonna have to say before my wife kills me that before the kids get out of daycare. So
Okay, there you go.
it'd have to be preferably sometime during the day.
That would.
But maybe we can talk after this
Yeah,
with LaShawn.
that would be great.
Thanks for strangling us.
I like it. And we are coming up on needing our public hearings our public listening sessions. And so in the calendar, did you have a target date?
Yeah, I don't have those in front of me, but I did email that to the group. So I guess a couple more questions. One would be, is everyone getting emails via their Butte-Silver email in a timely manner? And if not, I could add a personal email to the group emails if that is advantageous for anybody.
I think we need to maintain in our Butte-Silver email because of public open meeting law, et cetera. So we just need to be better at it if we're not responding to you in a timely manner.
So why don't I send that calendar out again, and everyone can kind of take a look at that, and then get back to me, I guess. And I guess that's another question is it best for me to address these issues at the Monday meetings, or do you want to form a subgroup to kind of go through public involvement stuff? There will be just a lot of activities, questions, to Commissioner Silk's statement about, not sure about doing the podcast. I would like to put together, we'll be putting together some materials that can go to the public. What is this? What are you doing? How can they participate? What are the issues at hand? And along with that, maybe some talking points that will kind of help everybody as they go through the public outreach process. So there's just going to be a lot of back and forth. So I guess my question to the commission is, do we want to do that via email? Do we want me to come, I can email materials and then we can talk about them at the Monday meetings, or is it best to form a subgroup to review that? And I know, we're all new to this exact process, so.
Ms. McCormick?
I like your idea of mailing it out to the group and then coming talk to us as a whole.
Okay.
At a meeting.
And I think we can subcommittee as needed with regard, especially if we want to go through the talking points and we don't want to spend 25 minutes on talking points, we can kind of, delegate that work out. But I agree. Let's add it to, we'll just make it a part of the agenda every Monday.
Okay.
And if we don't have to have you here, we will let you know.
And that's fine. I'm happy to be here. I think it does help me to hear all of this. The meeting minutes are also extremely helpful, but I'm very happy to be here so that I understand the issues. And then when we're creating materials to go to the public, I have all that background. So I have no problem with that. As long as you guys are good, just kind of discussing every public outreach thing in the meeting. And then, like you said, if there's things that need to be taken offline, we can do that. But that's the approach I'll take. So I will send out some materials to the group. We'll get some times for the podcast, and then we'll, go from there.
Excellent. Other questions for Ms. Adams? Thank you very much. All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so I think we already talked about party line. I will book the next meetings, and then we can, again, decide if we want to just go in the same order, we want to mix it up, or whatever. He's giving me the scowliest look. That's great. All right. Yeah. Perfect. All right, then our commissioner visits are booked. Yes, Kim? We have 6 on next Monday and 6 on the following, correct? Okay, very good. And the questions went out as well, so you have those? Okay, very good. All right, charter review with Mr. Enruth. I know we had talked about, we wanted our big set of questions, and Mr. Enruth, how do you want to proceed with us in this, this next bit?
I think if you provide your questions prior to me coming in, I can get you better answers. I mean, I'm literally sitting here jotting down notes after listening to the volunteers and like the possibilities and things, and I'm like, my God, there's far more than what we can discuss in an evening that I think would be much more appropriately put on paper for people to be able to digest later, digest prior to coming into the meeting. So going forward, if we're looking at the sections of the charter, if everybody could email me their questions. Simple ones I can obviously email back, bigger ones I can, draft if that works for everybody.
I think some deadlines are important because we've been kind of dancing on this for a bit. And I know we're hearing from our departments, we're learning more, we have better questions, but can we agree to some deadlines for Mr. Enruth that we'll have our questions to him by a certain time?
And I would appreciate that as well. I mean, if everybody can have their questions to me at least by the Wednesday before the committee meeting the following week, or commission meeting the following week. The reason I asked for Wednesday is obviously Wednesday is going to be my standard commission night. I'll at least be able to review them on Thursday and at least draft on Friday for the following Monday, or get them to you by Friday so everybody can review over the weekend. If you can get them to me sooner, I can try and get answers back sooner as well.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that, Matt. I understand it is a lot easier to be able to read a question. And we got more homework tonight, so I really would like to digest a lot of the things that we just got this evening, from the volunteers and also from Katie. So I'm kind of brain dead right now with all that information. This feels like a council of the commissioners meeting. Anyway, so I agree that if we could do that and not try to hash it out tonight. All right?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
do you
Mr.
want
Bennett.
to, do we want to have a date specific, like July 16th, 30 days from now? Any questions that pop up regarding the charter language, we can get them to Matt. And I'm sure we can extend the deadline if we have some other questions come up through the public involvement, public hearings and the outreach. So if we want to do a 30-day, let's get them to Matt early, that's our deadline.
Mr. Enruth?
And then also, if you're sending me questions, you have to love the Barracuda email system that the county has. I get emails from directors that get stuck in the Barracuda system. So if you do not get a response from me that I have received your question, please call me or try and shoot me another email so we have that verified. That's a really important thing that I've been following up on, is if you do not receive a response from me, email me again. Because one, it got stuck in the 500 emails I get a day, or two, it's in the Barracuda system and that's gone.
All right, so going back to July 16th, is that okay with everyone for us to have our questions drafted and sent to Mr. Enruth? Mr. Dolan, or Ms. Dolan?
You are tired. No, I'm kidding. Do you think it's I think that's great to have a deadline and a date specific. So after July 16th, will we have a special night of just talking about the charter questions? I think that might be a good idea. And then to promote that for folks that might be engaged enough to actually look at the charter, that might actually have some questions as well. So if we have like a date specific following July 16th with just charter questions and answers, that might be really beneficial. It would be beneficial for me too.
I think that would be wonderful. We could say maybe July 28th for that. Would that be a good target? Oh, you're camping on July. All right. Okay. And then if we are running into vacation or whatever, we'll look at it. But July 16th for the questions, and then tentatively July 28th for that review night just on charter. That sounds good to me. All right. New business. Great. Hearing none, let's move on. We don't have a public hearing. Any other scheduled matters? And then meetings are held every Monday at 5. There is one question I have for us. July 7th, Monday, July 7th is right after the long holiday. Do we want to give ourselves a night off, or do we want to continue on July 7th? Camping? Okay. All right, let's take July 7th off then. So we will not have a meeting on July 7th, and we will have done 2 back-to-back commissioner meetings, so we will have had a long time in our seats. We'll be doing our homework. We definitely have earned a night off. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, Kim. Yes, sorry.
I just need to make you aware I have a holiday on Thursday. It's Juneteenth. So I'll be taking 4 hours from the commission and 2 hours from the library. And I will be taking those hours. So I will do my best. This is going to be a long meeting. I'll do my best over the next 2 days to get the minutes typed up by Friday.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'll be me working in the weekend, like this past weekend. So.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you. All right, any opposed? All right, thanks, folks. I'll see you next week.